Because you got powerful legs. How'd you get the physique? Was it gym or how'd you get the physique?
I've always been.
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
I'm sure no one will mind.
Move him out of here, Darren.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump. You know what I'm saying?
Welcome, folks, to the 603rd edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse. We come at you 8 o'clock in the UK on Sunday nights, noon Pacific time. And you can catch us the day after everywhere you find your podcast, Spotify, iTunes, etc. We're live on YouTube, Facebook right now on this fantastic platform called StreamYard. I am a fan. And I'll tell you what, they might only do a card every quarter, it seems, but I am a fan of what PVC is putting on. They gave us a good one yesterday. We had two Davids in the ring, and they went to war with David Benavidez, picking up a decision victory over David Morrell despite being dropped in the 11th round and looking absolutely kind of gassed there. He found his way through in the end. Got a fairly close on a couple cards. One guy I don't feel was watching the fight, but it was I tell you, it was a fight where both guys were landing hard shots. I think Benavidez, his key shots were the body shots and also that kind of hooky right hand he was throwing around the guard of Morrell. But then Morrell found his own right hook, obviously from the southpaw stance. That's what he dropped Benavidez with, and I kind of feel like he did the better part of the damage with that one. But man, it was a good fight for interim light heavyweight supremacy, I guess you would call it, with an interim or a regular belt or such on the line. Turki Al-Sheikh wants Benavidez against the winner of Beterbiev and Bivol. But Des, this was a fantastic fight, well worth talking about, and I do believe one that was one of those fights that we can say if Beterbiev versus Bivol was fought on the highest level, this was fought just one level below.
Yes, good evening, Matty. I hope everyone's well. It was a brilliant fight, and these two are going to be fantastic additions to the light heavyweight division. I like them both, and there's not a lot between them. Before we talk about Benavidez and Morrell and that card and every other card, I'd just like to make a point. Last night, we was informed that John Cooney, who was fighting Nathan Howes for the super featherweight Celtic title, he collapsed after the fight was stopped in round 9, and John was taken to hospital. I've asked around a few people out in Belfast, and no one can come back to me and say how John's doing, but we just want to send our very best wishes to John. And from everyone on the asylum, we wish John Cooney a very speedy recovery. And he has our very best wishes. I'm sure you echo that, don't you, Matty?
Oh, absolutely. You worry about those guys, especially fall in the ring, especially when they start vomiting and stuff. It's
Yeah.
sometimes not a good sign at all. But our prayers go out to them. Sometimes that's the best you can do. But that's the danger of this sport, and especially like last night, the kind of shots those guys were landing. Any ordinary man would have succumbed to only a fraction of those shots. But the fact that these dudes were standing in when basically everything they were throwing was with such intention, it was amazing. I was blown away. This made it to the 12 round through the full 12 rounds.
Well, I know how good both these kids are, as we all do, but I knew that either Morale or Benavidez would know how to look after themselves when the going got tough, and I expected to see a little bit of distance between the two come round 7 or 8. I knew they were both good enough to hang tough for the first 6, and there wouldn't be a lot in it. I think the defining factor between the two, I think Benavidez 29-0 going in with 24 stoppages. I think he's the more round solid pro. I think he knows how to do the ugly stuff really well. I think he's a hardened pro. He knows how to look after himself when his back's on the ropes. You touched on that looping right hand he's got that sort of comes around the corner. It's a brilliant shot. It's very effective. And that's the sort of thing a pro boxer learns in the pro gyms, because you never get taught that in the amateurs. And David Morrell, who's 11-0 coming in, who is a standout amateur, he wouldn't have learned that yet. He wouldn't be as streetwise as Benavidez. And that's what we saw last night. I think Benavidez was a bit more streetwise. He was a bit more feral. He was that lion brought up in the wild. And Morrell's still that lion that's been brought up in the zoo. Both very good fighters, by the way. And I really want to see the impact they have on this 175 division. But I just felt that we spoke about it yesterday morning. I just think that in a championship round, Benavidez would be tougher. He'd be more rugged. He'd be more dogged. And he'd show his toughness. He'd be a bit more wily. He'd be a bit more feral. And I just think with Benavidez, you've got someone he's a very tough, hard-hitting, very good pro. And he can grind with anyone. And it's really interesting. I don't often say this about Beterbiev, but this Benavidez would be a really good opponent for Beterbiev, a really good opponent. Now, we're going to have to see how Bivol and Beterbiev goes, but I think both of these guys can live with both of them guys. And the winner of that fight should fight Benavidez, and that's a tough one to call. How do you see that?
What I think is interesting about that fight is the youth factor being at play, because a style like Benavidez, if you even if you're a big puncher and you're technically sound like Beterbiev is, as you start to slow down, he's got the kind of style that is just terrible for an older fighter who's just starting to lose that step, lose that reflex just a little bit, and that's the fight. He wanted the Canelo fight to make so he could really make his name. And I still honestly would have favored Benavidez at 168 against Canelo, even though I don't think we'll ever get that fight now. But Beterbiev gives him that same opportunity to really build his name. And it's one of those things. He'd be a 2-division champion. And with a handful of decent victories under his belt, over the few years, Morale obviously being one of them. Morale's not done, believe me, but it's just one of those things. If he was able to beat Artur Beterbiev and become undisputed at 175 pounds, he's a Hall of Fame fighter. Done before he's 30 years old.
What I think would worry a lot of fighters, Benavidez is rough and tough. So he's a good fighter. He can punch. He knows how to look after himself, but he's got an element of spite, of nastiness. He's a rough kid. And I think that really goes a long way, because they're all talented. They can all crack. They all know how to dig deep. But Benavidez is a bit nasty. Also, I've got to say, I want to give David Morrell huge credit for taking this fight. At 11-0, he's showing us what elite amateurs can do, and they can be fast-tracked. And I'm just, one of my standout prospects of last year and one of my coming out stars of this year is the middleweight Osles Iglesias, who's based out there in Canada and who's bouncing between Canada and Germany. I just wonder if him and Morrell fought for that Cuban national title, because Iglesias lost 5 Cuban national finals and Morrell won a Cuban national final in 17. I just wonder if he beat Iglesias, because they both turned pro at the same time as well. Both turned pro in 2019. Morrell's a good fighter, very good fighter, and we're going to see a lot more of Morrell. There's a huge future at either 75 or 68 for Morrell. He's a really good kid. But last night it all goes to Benavidez, who stepped up, took on it was a hard one for Benavidez, because if he'd have got beaten by Morrell, we'd have probably been quite happy to park Benavidez up. But he stepped up and beat him. And I think we've now got to look at either the Canelo fight or the winner of Beterbiev and Bivol. That would be huge for boxing.
Well, you look at Morrell, you got to give him the fact that last night, there was a few times you could see it on his face. A lot of other guys would have packed it in a couple of times, especially when Benavidez was really putting it on him. If you could just see like he had to step back. You see a couple of times he stepped back, took a deep breath, kind of had to reset himself. There's a lot of guys that would not have stayed in there and kept coming. Yeah, and like Benavidez, and I think you summed it up, Benavidez just had the better competition. He had just been there before, and Morrell hadn't. I think that was what I think you said. He had been there. The one guy had been there. The one guy hadn't. The body work, and Benavidez just has that motor, and Morrell just couldn't. I mean, you can't stop him. You could not stop Benavidez. He kept coming. He kept doing his thing, and he just could not stop that.
Morrell has a pretty sound amateur resume, and that's the thing. They probably have almost a similar number of rounds if you take the amateurs and professionals. But those professional rounds, they mean differently. It's essentially a different sport. But it's when you consider it's crazy to think that Benavidez turned pro when he was 16. He's not even 30 yet. I mean, we've been talking about this guy for about, a decade now. He was around 20, I think, when he hit most people's radars, give or take in that stretch. He says he wants to take it on up to cruiserweight, but I'll tell you what, James, and glad to have you back with us again. It's one of those interesting fights where, unless it found itself in some horribly one-sided fight, as one of the judge thought it was. I wish he would have tuned into the same event that I was tuning in. But I don't think that, flip a couple of rounds the other way and take away that point deduction from Taylor in the 11th, which some people say was questionable for the shot after the bell. But James, I can't see either of these guys' stock going down after this fight. No way, no how. It's just someone has to lose.
What you mean out of Benavidez and Morrell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't look at the judges' scorecards. I didn't really feel the need. I felt
there
like it was
2 115 111s and a 118 110. So considering the knockdown, one judge only found, or I think a 118 109 because of the deduction on the 11th. So one judge only gave Morrell the 11th round. That's all they could find in the fight for him, and I think that was pretty ridiculous in my opinion.
I had Benavidez winning fairly handily. I mean, probably in between those two extremes, to be honest with you. But I had my doubts about what Benavidez could do against Morrell. If you take into account that at 168, some of his most impressive victories, he's had such a significant size advantage in those fights. It's really difficult to be. It was difficult for me to be like, okay, is this just like a weight bully situation? Obviously, he does have a lot of talent, skill, size, aggression, all that good stuff. But because he was so much bigger, I had trouble kind of buying his move up to 175, especially when he looked a little bit lackluster in his first outing. And when I saw him on the scales before the fight, Morrell's the bigger guy, but he was relentless in this fight. And, he does a lot of subtle things without appearing to do much, like the way he brings his guard up and leans back, great judgment of distance, and the way he's able to rip off hooks with so little room between him and Morrell, and the speed and the way he was pulling down the glove and whipping in hooks to the head. There was a lot of guile there and a lot of smooth work. Unorthodox, really, a lot of the time, because I suppose it's down to the referee's discretion how much of that is allowed to continue. But he was given full scope to do it, and I think Morrell was too. I was really impressed with him, and I'm not sure how he stacks up against either Bivol or Beterbiev, but I would say like there's a shade between them. I would still consider Beterbiev and Bivol above Benavidez, but he's definitely closer in my estimation now. And Morrell, it was a little bit frightening how much he was able to absorb at times, because he was eating uppercuts that were twisting his head right around, and he would just step in and absorb more. So yeah, I wouldn't be mad at a wide scorecard, because I do feel like Benavidez was, I think it was, as Justin said, like most fighters would have jacked it in like at several points during that fight. And but then again, Morrell showed he was more alive as well. Like I feel like he did the most damage with a single punch. I think it was like the 7th or the 8th where he landed a hook and looked to wobble Benavidez, and then obviously the knockdown in the 11th. So it was like a proudly fought contest between both men. Like they weren't willing to give in, and it did get a little bit uncomfortable at times. But I suppose, that's what championship caliber fighting is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, you're fighting for so much, and it's at a high level. It gets tense, and sometimes things get a little crazy. But yeah, I just enjoyed this fight thoroughly. And Justin, I think one of the things that I found most interesting about this fight, or most entertaining for me, it was the fact that, like, in a lot of fights that are kind of nip and tuck, and you have guys like, one guy will land a hard right hand, and then 10 seconds later the other guy will find a hard left hook and whatever. But these guys, when one of them would step in and land a 4 or 5 punch combo, 10-15 seconds later they'd get get the guy on his back on the ropes, and they'd return fire. Same thing, 3, 4, 5 punch combination. They were returning big fire punches and bunches. It's just it was refreshing to see a fight that was fought so much on offensive terms on the championship level, because a lot of these end up being pretty defensive affairs. And even though this went 12, I don't consider this a defensive affair by any stretch.
No, you're right. This was like the Spanish machismo or whatever, because they were talking to each other the whole time. I mean, as soon as the fight started, the whole round they would talk to each other. So I think the back and forth was, like you said, high quality, but both guys were not going to take it from each other without giving it back. And I think that was just their personalities. That's kind of how they carry themselves. So I knew that was going to be this kind of fight, because each guy has fought like that. They act like that. That is who they are. And you're right. I had never thought this fight was going to be a defensive, like technical type fight, because Benavidez doesn't fight that way, and Morrell doesn't. This was like you said, this is a good card, and we'll get to the real back and forth fight here in a minute. The Isaac Cruz fight, because that was another level of fight too. But yeah, PBC, they come out with a card scene every 6 months, but they hit this one. They've hit this one pretty good, because you just had high quality guys in their prime. And like you said, it's so funny. This is for the interim. Like these guys, like,
interim unified. They're bending all sorts of rules.
But what does that really show, though? It doesn't really have to be a world title on the line. Just put 2 guys in that are high level and want to fight. You don't have to have you don't have to have the belt actually sitting there. You can put it in, or whatever you want to do. It's just a way to make money for the belts. But you had 2 guys that knew, if we win this, we're going to get paid. The money, like our careers, this is all about this. So you don't have to have shit like on the line. The interim was just a stupid thing. Like I said, whoever wins, I think Beterbiev Bivol will definitely fight Benavidez. I think that's going to be Beterbiev. I think he'll fight Benavidez. We're not even going to get to that fight yet, but we're not even going to predict it. But that'll be an awesome fight, because you got 2 guys. You thought these 2 guys were not going to go win at each other. You know what Benavidez and Beterbiev are going to do. Yeah. So all this sets up to the really awesome. It's a shame it'll probably be in Saudi Arabia, and that atmosphere won't be as good as it should be for a fight like this. Because you put that fight in Vegas, you put it in Phoenix, where Benavidez is from. Could you imagine the crowd if they put it like where, I can imagine Benavidez, if they where the Cardinals play, they might have a good chance of maybe not selling it out, but man, you'd have 40, 50,000 people in there if Benavidez fought Turbiev where the Cardinals play. Because that's where he's from that area. You would have a ton of people, but we're not going to do that. You know they're not going to do that. They're going to put it in Saudi Arabia. We're not going to get to see that live. It just is what it is.
Like, and it'd be a weird time to put it on, like, because you don't want to mess up the turf. But it's like October would probably be like the best month to do it.
Yes,
Yes,
you can go outside. You can go outside. You can open the roof if you wanted to, because that's a retractable, I think. So yeah, it makes sense. I think it is.
How bizarre.
So it's like that's what I would do, but that's not going to happen. But like I said, this was just two good guys going at it. Somebody, like you said, somebody had to lose. Morrell, he's going to win a world title. We're going to see him again. He'll be a champion. He'll get his. He just ran into the wrong guy last night. It happens. Who cares? You lose. Who cares? It doesn't matter anymore if you lose. People make a big deal about that. Who cares? He's going to be back.
No.
He's going to be a champion. It's over.
No, so it's a very, very good point, because 3 months ago we thought that it was Beterbiev and Bivol at 75 and the rest. Now we've had two more added to that elite group. We've got Beterbiev, Bivol, Benavidez, and Morrell. So we now got four really good guys at 175. So I think it's been last night was an absolute positive for the sport and the division.
Yeah, here's what's interesting. Let me kind of ask you guys your group think on this one. So, Beterbiev, Bivol, Benavidez, Morrell. Obviously you got to put Beterbiev at the top of that list, but these guys like are at the top of the heap of the division. And then, can you guys think of anybody else who can compete with these guys at the level that we at least last saw them in the ring? Is any names that come up to mind at all at light heavyweight who can play with these guys?
No. We've been having this conversation, but normally it was just Bivol and Beterbiev. We've been talking about this for 2 years, that there's just so much daylight between the top two and the rest. But out of nowhere has come these two. And I think, I don't want to speak for other people, but I think we'd all be a little bit hesitant to call a Benavidez versus Bivol or Beterbiev. And I'd even, if you could give Morrell another 12 months, keep him active, Morrell goes in between all them guys and has a really good chance of winning. I just think he's a little bit green at the moment. I think he takes too many punches. He don't quite know how to look after himself in the pros. He's a very, very good fighter, though. But we saw last night, and I think it was James, Benavidez knows how to do the ugly stuff. He knows how to do the pro stuff. And that's 17. It's been in his pro gym since he was 17 years old. And that's been managed. He's not had the life punched out of him. So he's now at a point in his career now where he knows, I've taken all the positives from being in a pro environment, and I'm now doing that under the lights. If Morrell could be a bit more streetwise, a bit more cute, a bit more nasty, and look after himself in there a little bit better, we're talking 10%, Morrell goes into that conversation as well. But right now, to ask the question, I don't think anybody from outside of that four, be it Boazzi, Callum Smith, Gavodnich, Yard, I don't think any of them are in that conversation. There's an awful lot of distance between that top group and the rest. But we're fortunate. We're fortunate that in the last 3 months we've seen two guys jump into that top tier. Sorry, Justin.
Well, like you said, Yard already had his chance, and I don't think Yard can hang with Beterbiev, and if Morrell, now Yard and Morrell would probably be a decent fight because Yard's tough. He showed what he can do, but like you said, the top four is the top four.
Yeah.
Boazzi, I don't think Boazzi's ever going to fight anybody. I don't think he's ever really gonna, and I think there's a reason why Boazzi's never fought anybody, because I think they know he can't hang with that level, and so they just haven't put him with that level. But yeah, it's
interesting enough though. If you was asking me to just the best chance, I think Boazzi versus Bivol. Depending what Beterbiev does to Bivol in the next one, depending what Bivol we're left with after 24 rounds with Beterbiev. But if you ask me, Matty, to put one in there and give him the best chance, I would say after Beterbiev, let's see what Bivol we've got. Let's see what Boazzi's like after Callum Smith. And that might be the connection. You might get Boazzi in there to beat a Bivol or hang tough with a Bivol over 12.
See, based on Turkey's involvement, this is I kind of see it going this way because he already said he would love to find a way to match the winner of this fight, Benavidez, with the winner of Beterbiev Bivol rematch. Okay, and let's just play around with the idea that that Beterbiev repeats at that, and then let's try to say maybe the losers fight each other then, and maybe Bivol gets roughed up a little bit here. So on that very same card, you could have Benavidez against Beterbiev, and you could also have Bivol against Morel. And then again, maybe possibly the winners of those fight each other kind of round robbing, and he opens up the door for the trilogy between Beterbiev and Bivol, or a completely new combination of fighters with Benavidez taking on Bivol and Morel getting a shot at Beterbiev.
But touching back on something Justin just said, Callum Smith was absolutely soundly outclassed by Beterbiev. Yard had his go against Beterbiev. I think the only one out of our domestic group over in the UK that you could say would pose a bit of jeopardy, and you'd have to match it right, would probably be Boazzi. I'm not saying he wins, by the way, but I think a Boazzi versus a Bivol that's done 24 rounds with Beterbiev, you might have something, but it's a small if.
Yeah, I mean, there's some known level of class when it comes to Boazzi, and then the unknowns. Obviously, you haven't seen him try yet. So yeah, I mean, best of luck for him on that one. But it's, what if they don't find a way for Morel to fight the loser of Beterbiev Bivol, what I feel bad is I kind of think Morel is actually in no man's land, which is an absolute shame. So, but I don't know. We'll see how this shapes up. Maybe PBC doesn't want to play ball, and there's something completely different thrown in the mix in there. Who knows? We have Benavidez said he's interested if Ramirez wins a fight against Afataya, or maybe if that fight doesn't even come off, he'd be interested going to cruiserweight and trying that out. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what goes on. I do kind of think there's some similarities between Benavidez and Ramirez, but I do think Benavidez is a better fighter. I would say that I think his downfall, should he fight Artur Beterbiev or even Dmitry Bivol at that, who is just, such a quality operator. And if he gets the win over Artur, I mean, obviously he still got it. But Benavidez does square up on the inside. He does cross over himself and get himself in some weird positions there. And I think he'd get dropped, maybe not hard, but he'd get dropped by Beterbiev doing that. And I really think that Bivol would just work the angles on him and really potentially chew him up when he makes those mistakes. That's just my hunch. But anyhow, that was one hell of a fight. And maybe we'd be talking about this as fight of the year under normal circumstances, especially so early on. But unfortunately, a couple fights prior to this, Isaac Cruz and Anel Fierro went to war over 10 rounds, with Cruz getting a unanimous decision in a fight that I honestly thought could have gone either way. A 98-92 kind of seemed out of bounds on that, but these guys were landing some hard shots on there. Fierro becoming one of those guys that realizes the shorter fighter leaning in can eat up those uppercuts, and then he was landing them hard, but Cruz doing his thing, throwing over the top, working the body, opening them the shots upstairs. It was a very fun fight over 10 rounds where both guys, I think, were hurt at times. Just a fun war with these guys, and fighting at 140 pounds, where I think is definitely above where Cruz would probably perform optimally. What were your thoughts on this fight, James? This was, for me, was definitely the fight of the year up to this point.
Well, you know what? You're making me sad because I've only caught the highlights. And
Shame.
You're making me really sad. But now I saw the result, and from the highlights, it looked like carnage. But Cruz tends to bring that out in his fights, doesn't he? I mean, if he doesn't overwhelm people, like he gave Gervonta Davis his toughest outing yet, beat up Rolly, and he's just that type of, Tasmanian devil type. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and catch this after the pod, but I'm gutted that I haven't seen it already now.
It's definitely worth your time, 100%. Justin, what were your thoughts on this one? Did you agree with the decision?
I agree with you. You can't be upset either way it went. I mean, the fight started out basically Cruz was first 2 rounds was doing what he wanted to do, and all it took was Fierro with that counter got his respect when he shook him, and as soon as he shook him in the third, it was on then. Because Fierro got that confidence that he needed to get, and then that fight turned into a war. And you got it. I mean, Fierro, each guy just took hellacious shots and kept coming. And neither guy was really like Cruz is not really he's not known to be a one hitter type guy. So you know they were going to take shots. And I don't have an argument either way. I don't even remember. I've got it scored. I don't remember how I had it. I don't really complain how you had it. I think 98-92 is crazy. Is that what you said? Was it 98-92?
Yeah, one of the judges had it 98-92.
Okay, that's stupid. That's just
another 97-93, another 96-90 or 96-94. 96-94 is definitely in the ballpark.
Yeah, 98-92 is stupid. There's no way. I mean, there's no way that Cruz took 8 of the 10 because look how many rounds that you could just look at the corners. You could just see what people are thinking and look at in your eyes. There was a few rounds where Fierro just landed like 6-7 shots in a row. And how did he lose that round? It's like, yeah, the cards. But that's one of those fights. This is what it is. I think Cruz was going to win any close fight. He was going to get that. But that was, I mean, there's still a lot of year left to go, but that's going to be a hard one to beat. That's going to be a hard one to beat because that is the kind of, the only thing that fight lacked was somebody to get really hurt or went down.
Putting on their ass.
That's what would have made it. The seal fight of the year. Usually, you have to have at least somebody go down once or twice, and Cruz almost did because that was a perfect counter shot he hit him with. And so, yeah, that was a war. That was a great fight. I think that's what happens though when you put guys together that similar styles and. Cruz is definitely not done, but like you said, he's up way above where he should be. He's been fighting for like 9 years as a pro already. Look how many shots he's taken. He's going to be in a fight like this forever now. I don't think he's going to just dominate anymore. I think he's always going to kind of be in these just wars. And that was just another tough one.
It's going to be steep.
It's going to be like a Soto Carras type thing where. Like he'll battle, but then he's just going to get wiped out after like 4 or 5 rounds. And there's going to be no. Yeah, you're right. His chin will be nothing. It's going to happen though because every one of these guys, when it hits the wall, they hit the wall. And there's like no coming back from that. It's coming, but hey, it's like enjoy it while you can because I would imagine since it was so close in our eyes, there's not a. I don't know how many fights Cruz is out there for him. I say just rematch him. Put him on the undercard of another PBC pay-per-view coming up and just let him do it again.
I think you'd rather have another chance at Valenzuela.
I mean, personally he would, but for me, I'd rather have this fight again. I think Valenzuela might be just a little too good of a boxer for him. This is more of a fight I would rather watch as him versus this guy again.
Yeah, these fights, sometimes they just look good on paper. This one did, and it still outperformed. But honestly, a great card here. When you had, again, like I led off with, if we're talking just the first week of February, Benavidez Morel probably would be the clubhouse leader for fight of the year, if not for this, on the same card. That doesn't happen very often. It was a treat.
It was someone on comms last night said we've got 2 guys here trying to take each other's soul, and that sums it up brilliantly. It was a really good fight for me. Fight of the year so far. I know we're only just coming into February, but it's going to be a hard one to beat. 2 Mexican kids just trying to outfight each other. Where does Pitbull go? I like the Venezuela return because that was a close one first time around. Or just do this one again. It was a really good fight. Pay the kids well and get them out again in 4 or 5 months. It was a really good fight. I had Cruz winning it because I thought he was a little bit. I think he was a little bit more proactive, and I think he ended a lot of the exchanges. He had the final say in quite a lot of close exchanges. I can see how a fight like that can sometimes have a 5 or 6 round swing because rounds can be very hard to score. It was a close fight. It was a brilliant fight, but no complaints.
Yeah, it's there was just a couple of funky scorecards last night. There was nothing that was like just out screwy. Like I understand Taylor's deduction. It wasn't the best deduction I've ever seen, but yeah, I kind of trust Taylor's judgment. He's one of the better guys in the sport, and both him and Doc work in the same events. You know, that part's taken care of. You had a couple of funky cards leaning towards the favorite house fighter, I guess you would have to say. But then, Justin, we were really, really wrong on this one. Stephen Fulton repeating over Brandon Figueroa, landed some sharp punches on him. Someone in the chat mentioned that Figueroa just has too long of levers, kind of fight the way that he was fighting Fulton, and I can buy this defeat. I kind of just think I feel like Brandon Figueroa is too inactive for him to be the fighter that he needs to be, and I hate saying this. I was a fan of him. Because I don't want to give not give Stephen Fulton his due, but I just kind of feel like Figueroa's close to done. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, he looked a little off of what he does, like you said, because he threw a lot of punches, but they were just so wide, and Fulton just picked him apart. Now Figueroa is one of those guys that he's got that style that can fool you. If you haven't watched a lot of boxing or you're a judge that's not that experienced, because he throws so much that it looks like he's actually landing and it looks like he's actually doing great work. But if you pay close enough attention, Fulton was just countering everything he did. He was just hitting the short shots inside. He was just picking him off. And yeah, Figueroa, it looked like a no plan. He just put his head down, he just tried to swarm Fulton for wide shots. Nothing was there. There's no real power on him. Fulton was able to soak him up. Fulton really, I wouldn't say an easy night, but this fight for him was way easier. We got this wrong. You're right, because I thought this fight would be harder for Fulton. It actually was easier than the first fight. He was just able to do what he wanted to do. I will say this about Fulton. I've been watching boxing for about 28 years. I've never seen a guy come out with the work boots, jorts, trunk combo, which I like. I liked it, though. It was different. He had them custom made. That's just my thing. He went back to the old, that was just cool. Anyway, that was just something different. He really went old school on that one. Anyway, but Fulton, yeah, if you had to really pay attention to the work and really watch what he was doing, but he was just doing really good inside skilled boxing. He was picking him up, doing what he wanted to do. And Figueroa you can't fight that way unless, like you said, he doesn't have the power to hurt anybody. So that fighting style kind of hurts him, because if he's going to swing that wide, anybody's going to be able just to go inside of him and just pick him apart. And that's what Fulton did. And that was, like I said, it wasn't easy, but it was not that hard for Fulton either.
Yeah, he just kind of pieced him apart, and it's tough. Like, I'd want to give Stephen Fulton his due, but there's just something missing there that means I don't particularly enjoy him. It's kind of like when you were a kid and you would get socks for Christmas, and they could be really cool, but you still got fucking socks, so it was a disappointment. I don't know. Des, you're a fan, but do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, but I like socks, and I like Stephen Fulton. And on this pod, I've never, ever put Stephen Fulton down. I've always seen a very, very good fighter in that kid. And I think it was just after Christmas, we spoke about this card and we spoke about this fight. And I said, you'd have to fancy Figueroa, but bear in mind, Fulton's already beaten him. And Fulton is that brilliant, switch-hitting, slick, elusive Philadelphian fighter. And you can't take your eye off of him. And last night, we saw he's not got the punch. He's not a puncher. But that's what's probably made him such a good fighter, because he spent his life not being a puncher. And he spent his life coming through a hard school of boxing, having to look after himself and have to rely on his skill sets. His motor skills
There's
are
some
phenomenal.
similarities
And
between him and Tevin Farmer. Like that you got to give them credit. Like they're not punchers, but they have found their way through those gyms. You're right.
correct. And look, he hasn't come from a place. He's come from a boxing hotbed, a sport hotbed. You know, this is a Philadelphia kid that's already been a world champion and jumped up a weight. And I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but he was really lackluster in his last fight, first fight up at is it super featherweight? Is it now, isn't he? No, he's a featherweight, isn't he? Fulton. So his first fight of featherweight, he looked really lackluster, and that doesn't surprise me. And I think a lot of people would have looked at the Fulton Inoue result, but you've got to put Inoue to one side. He's a special talent. He's a generational talent. We'll never see one of him again. And you look at the last one that Fulton had, and you think, this is just tailor-made for Figueroa to maraud him and swarm him and throw them big, long shots. But that's what Fulton's made for. You can't do that to him. And it reminds me of when Shane Mosley boxed Margarito, and everybody was hot on Margarito. And Shane Mosley said after the fight, I've been boxing them aggressive, come forward, long-armed Mexicans all my life. I spent every day in the gym with them. I know how to deal with them type of fighters. I've got that sense last night.
It's so bad.
He did, yeah, but really badly. And I just got that feeling that Fulton had seen this before. And we know he'd beaten Figueroa, but that result to one side. I can't think of a fight where a guy was so heavily tipped to get beat, but looked so comfortable and so in his groove. And the work boots and the work shorts typified his mindset. He just went to work. And let's be clear, last night, he had the physicality in there. He was bossing the fight. He was pushing Figueroa around. And on the inside, something very interesting about Stephen Fulton. When someone's in the pocket, they like to throw them up. So if you can imagine a left and a right inside, or they throw them across like a hook. Fulton sees the picture and he just drops his shoulder. Now, it could be his right or his left because he's a switcher. But whatever his leading shoulder is, he drops it. And that gives him a little bit of leverage to throw this looping shot on the inside. And if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. Whenever Fulton's on the inside, he perches himself where his shoulder's just on the drop. And he throws this looping hook over the top. And he lands with it. Now, he's never going to knock people out because he's not a puncher. But he buzzes people and he scores and he wins exchanges. I thought last night, for me, was the fight of the night. And it's the one I tell people to go and watch because it was a brilliant example of back foot, front foot, and switch hitting boxing from a guy that couldn't punch. But he still had physicality and he still knew how to box. And it was a brilliant example of that. Brilliant performance, Stephen Fulton. He's now a two-weight world champion. And I didn't call it, but I said, you can't take your eye off Stephen Fulton. He's a very good fighter from a very, very good school.
Well, like you said, those guys that can't punch are always the better boxers because you got no choice. It's necessity. It's necessity. If you can't box and you can't punch, you're going to get destroyed. You have to be. You have to be able to do one.
And them guys that can punch, it's their defense that always lets them down. It is
exactly
one of them situation. Yeah, it's one. And Fulton last night. Oh, look, it's really difficult because we all remember Fulton from the Inoue result. But if you can just put that to one side, and I'm looking across this featherweight division, Matty, I'm not sure anyone there, even Espinosa with his height, will know how to deal with a bag of tricks that is Stephen Fulton.
That's an interesting one. Let's think through it. Like, if you know, one of the reasons, James, I'll say that I didn't want Stephen Fulton to win this fight, and whether you saw this fight or not, I don't think it's going to be a matter with the question. One of the reasons I didn't want him to win this fight is if Inoue moved up, I was kind of like just wanting new matches. I didn't want a replay of anything that we had already seen. So with Stephen Fulton winning this fight, James, it kind of takes that off the table for me. But if you're looking at Stephen Fulton around the featherweight division, who do you think anyone really has his number? If Inoue doesn't move up, let's say he's not part of this equation.
Yeah, it's it's a little bit unfair to kind of reach for the Inoue comparison, given the performance he put in against Figueroa. But it's like I was actually struck by the difference, the contrast between those two performances, because as Des said, I completely agree with him. He looked far more comfortable diffusing the aggressive fighter than he ever did against Inoue, who was this, this accurate, powerful blitzer coming in and out. So, I was actually quite. I'm a fan of socks for Christmas too, so I was enjoying the performance really. So yeah, but it's very hard to predict like what he's going to be doing moving forward, man. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what the top 10 of the featherweight scene looks like, but I believe that it's a compliment to Inoue, really. I think they're going to be entangled in each other's records, and if I hope to see that fight again. Not that the result would be any different, but that with Fulton getting this win, surely they naturally build towards some kind of a rematch. There's a conversation to be had there. There's always a conversation around weight and I'm much stronger this time around, etc., etc. So I, for one, would like to see that again, but I think the result will be the same. But I'm not sure on matchups, broadly speaking, for Fulton.
Well,
Matty, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can I ask a question to all the guys in the chat? And I'd like to see a contrast of opinions between Justin and James, right? We're really hot on Nick Ball at the moment, and he's a featherweight. And we saw how Nick Ball, he didn't struggle with Raymond Ford, but that was a really hard fight that could have gone one of both ways. And then in his homecoming against Ronnie Rios, we all said on this pod, yeah, Nick Ball won it, and Nick Ball was everything we thought he would be, but he did take a lot of punches. And we said after that fight against Ronnie Rios, Nick Ball's got to learn to be cuter, and he's got to learn to look after himself a bit. So,
and when you're that short,
knowing what we know about,
just adorable.
Well, now what we know about Nick Ball, and he's a good kid, and we all like him on this pod. But now what we've just seen in Stephen Fulton and what Stephen Fulton's done in his career, if you could just park the Inoue one up, because James is right, that seemed to be an anomaly of a performance. Would you fancy putting Nick Ball in with a Stephen Fulton? I asked Justin and I asked James and the guys in the chat, because that seems to me like I don't want to influence him, but that's like a hard fight for someone like Nick Ball at the moment.
I think that considering Nick Ball's style and his age and the point of his career, I still feel like he has the energy and the kind of ferocity to find a lot of success in that fight. I think I like Nick Ball in that fight, to be honest with you. And I think it would be an absolute cracker. Like similar stylistically to the Raymond Ford fight. But yeah, I think that would be
it's a good fight, isn't it? Yeah, it's a good fight. Yeah, it's a good fight.
Well, you got to look at...
What about you, Just?
You got to look at... You said Inoue is an anomaly. Inoue is just different because he can absolutely flat out bang through a cement wall, and Fulton can't punch. And then that's just one of those styles that Fulton's never going to win that fight. So we can, Ball, I think the Ball comparison would have to be, can he hurt Fulton? Does he have the power to hurt Fulton? Because if he can't put a dent in Fulton, he's not going to outbox Fulton. He's not going to outcute him. Because Nick Ball has one style. I don't think he's ever going to develop a really good boxing IQ or really good boxing style. So Fulton is going to have the advantage in 90% of the categories except power. So then, like I said, can Ball do enough to hurt Fulton? So Fulton, and think about it, Fulton has been in with Figueroa twice, and he's been in with Inoue. So he's already been in with three guys that are going to have the exact same style that Ball has. So Fulton's going to be no surprises with Ball coming into that fight. But
I'm a little bit. I'm with you. I'm a bit between the two, because I think I'm with James. I think it's a brilliant fight, a brilliant clash of styles. It's got the Raymond Fords about it, which was a brilliant fight, and we're hot on Raymond Ford as well. But I just think, James, I'm leaning with Justin here. I think Fulton would know too much, has done too much, and I think Fulton would figure Nick Ball out. But I'm leaning on the side of, I think Fulton would outbox Nick Ball because he's done it a few times before. But it is a good fight.
You think Ray Vargas had success versus Ball boxing at times?
So
it's like it'd be
a close fight.
Yeah, if Ball, like I said, I'll say it again. He would have to find a way to sting Fulton. He'd have to hurt him a little bit, because if Fulton gets confidence and gets it going, Ball can't do anything to counteract that. He just can't. He doesn't have the ability to break down Fulton if he cannot hurt him. And I don't think he would be able to hurt Fulton. Inoue, you just can't count that. That's just a different level of power. I mean, Inoue would probably not Ball 17 rows if they fought each other. So you just can't count that. You have to just pretend Inoue doesn't exist when you talk about these fights, because that just will mess up everything. Inoue's not even a fighter when you talk about other guys fighting around those divisions, because you can't do any comparisons. You can't do any of this, because it's just not fair to those guys and where they're at. They're just not going to be able to do that. So yeah, if I had to choose, like I said, I'd lean Fulton, and I say it would be a close fight.
Yeah,
I say Ball would be in there, but I'm thinking like 116, 112. I just think Fulton would get him.
You know, Ball brings a different type of pressure to the type that Figueroa brought last night. He's more like leaning, slower. His punches take a lot longer to get to the target, whereas Ball, he's always pressing against you, and he's always in position to let off 5-6 punch combinations, and his reach is deceptively long as well. So I feel like the style matchup is slightly different, but with Fulton,
you're right.
And just how like quick Fulton can rip counters, and just, you know, he's able to find space in the smallest of pockets. I think, you know, that it would just be a fantastic fight, but I think his lack of punch power would ultimately bite him in the arse in that fight. To be honest, I think I'm leaning towards Ball.
Do you know what worries me a little? Everything you said there's bang on, James, by the way. But do you know what? I just got something in the back of my mind. I think the Raymond Ford result still irks me a little bit, because I thought Raymond started slow, and if it started a bit quicker, or if that fight had been in America, I think Ball might have lost that Raymond Ford fight. I thought he just won it, by the way, but I think there's a couple of rounds that could have swung the other way, and I think Ball could have found himself losing that one. So it's the Raymond Ford fight that makes me think you can deal with Nick Ball's pressure and power, and if Raymond Ford could, I think Fulton can.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll tell you this: the argument that I would make on this fight, and you guys might find this strange, is the bet that I would actually make would be for the fight not to go the distance. And that's because, as you guys have discussed with Ball already, like he has that opportunity. And I can't remember who in the chat was discussing, you know, Figueroa and the size of his levers compared to the rest of his body and the style he fights. But that's kind of what puts him at a disadvantage if you back somebody like Fulton, who's queued up against the ropes. But Ball is not only shorter, he's got much shorter arms on that. And Des, you had mentioned earlier about how Fulton gets cute and he does that shoulder drop and he kind of does a looping shot. But if you're against a shorter fighter who is already hunched, that's not a legal blow. That's behind the head.
Correct.
So that takes it away. But my hunch is, but he has to get Fulton against the ropes on that. So the reason I say not to go the distance is not because Fulton can punch, but because Ball is leaned down and so susceptible to the uppercut that if he can't get Fulton against the ropes and Fulton can continuously get around the corner, he can piece him up. Absolutely.
It's a good fight, whatever way we cut it.
And also, an interesting fact about Nick Ball you guys might not have known is prior to an incident involving getting kicked by a mule, his name was Nick Balls. Yeah.
Let's move on.
That's just your fun fact of the day right there. But earlier, the fight that opened up that card, at least on the paid portion, is I believe was Jesus Ramos against Jason Rosario. Almost slipped me there. And Rosario, he made it 8 rounds, and he kind of learned to absorb a body punch to some degree. He's still succumbed, 8th round, but that was from a lot of headshots. This is at a new weight class for Jesus Ramos, moving up to 160 pounds for this one. But I have to give credit to Rosario for making it all the way through 8 rounds, Justin. That was impressive. And the fact that it was pretty much from headshots, that was even more of a shock to me. Not that he was stopped, but by headshots, Even with, especially, I mean, he got ate up to the body. The Ramos went in there with the plan to beat the shit out of his body, and he did. But I mean, the headshots actually did him in.
Yeah, that was the only thing going into that fight was how long can Rosario go? I don't think anybody ever expected him to win, but you're right. It's just how long could he go? And he went way further. I was thinking like I mean, you talked about last week. I was thinking maybe the first or second shot would have peeled him, and he would have been done. That'd have been. But he really, sometimes this happens in boxing. You got a guy who everybody keeps saying is going to get knocked out. He can't take it. Every once in a while, they have to suck up their, they want that manhood. They want that pride and I think you could tell in his face, that's what he was trying to do. He knew he was getting hurt every shot, but he was just trying just for his pride. Could he go the distance? And, they should have stopped it probably before they got that far because he was just getting, and Ramos, if you go and get back to Ramos, I've never been that impressed with him. He's a decent guy. I think Ryan Deal made a good point. He does smother his stuff a lot. He doesn't do anything that well, but Rosario, I mean, he did what he was supposed to do. When it's all said and done, he was supposed to knock Rosario out. He knocked him out. But yeah, Rosario definitely, because he went 8 rounds almost, we'll probably see him again. I'm sure he'll get another run out somewhere just because he lasted longer than they thought. They probably think, well, hey, if he could go this, put him out there again. So this beating probably earned him another payday just because he went longer than he thought he was going to go to. So yeah, he'll get beat up.
This sport is full of perverse incentives.
It will. So he'll get beat up. He'll get beat up worse next time because he didn't get beat up as bad this time, and that's how this going to work for him.
What a world we live in. But it's hard it's hard to believe we can't get behind Jesus Ramos more because Des, I don't know if you saw this fight or not, but last time we saw him, or we did not last time, but a couple fights out, thought he got screwed in the fight against Erickson Lubin. That was part of a parlay I won, so I'll take the W because I've been on the wrong side of those many, many times before. But if you turn that L into a W, he's got a decent resume. What is it about Jesus Ramos that people just can't get behind him, Des? I can't figure it out. He's just not great at anything, but he's kind of a little decent, good at everything.
What's Arizona like for boxing? Is it a hotbed of boxing? Have they got a lot going on?
Absolutely, especially because it's a border state. You've had so much migration there, and there's just a good collection of Hispanic cultures down there. There's some fights, and I've been to Glendale for God, why is it why is it killing me right now? He just fought Navarrete. Valdez against the Australian when we went down there, and to see Sinisa Estrada as well. It's a great fight area down there. Great fans, again, really Hispanic. They're the ones who I swear carry the sport. So yeah, I don't know. It's a good place for the sport. Yeah.
Well, the first thing you could do is start getting active. He's not been very busy over the last 2 years. He had 2 fights in nearly 2 years, and that's no way to build a resume, especially if you're in a hotbed of boxing. You've got everybody else getting out. In answer to your question, I don't know why. You're quite right. If you take that Lupin result to one side, he's got a very solid resume. He can punch. I don't know the answer to the question, mate, but the first thing he's got to do is put that loss behind him, which he looks like he's doing, but get active. Fighters need to be active. Now, I know that's not entirely down to him.
It's got to be PBC. Like Figueroa has basically fought once a year for the last 3 years, I think, or 4 years, with 1-2 fight year in there. He's 27 years old. When was the last time you remember, a championship level fighter in their mid 20s without serious injuries fighting basically once a year, once every 10 months, 9 months?
Yeah, and look, he had the Mendoza win, then he had the Spencer win, but the Lubin was lost really set him back. And he's not been active since then. And look, you're right, it's probably a PBC thing. But he's got to get active, and he's got to get 3 or 4 notable wins under his belt. He's halfway through that. Let's see where he goes. But last night was a big step in direction. And the answer to the question, I don't know why they've not bit to him. I don't know why they've not taken the bite. But it's relatively early days, I suppose. We've got to see a bit more of him. What's he like in terms? Is he an exciting fighter, Matty? Does he have a bit of charisma? Has he got a good personality? I don't know much about the kid.
He seems a little bit flat, maybe in the personality thing.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
You know,
who was the other kid that never took off? The one that fought Adrian Broner. The one that was it Jesse Vargas? He never took off, did he? And he had a really good resume. And Mikey Garcia never took off. And he was a brilliant fighter across 3 or 4 divisions. Sometimes you've got to have a bit of a spark. And yeah,
well, Mikey Garcia was different. He never really wanted to box. He was always arguing about money and his. But if you ask Mikey Garcia, he'll tell you he didn't really like boxing.
He made more money.
He didn't enjoy it.
He made more money unwillingly than any other boxer I can think of.
Yeah, he absolutely. If you hear some of his interviews and things he said, he did not enjoy boxing. He said he didn't like any of it. But it was a family thing. He was decent. He was good at it, and hell, you might as well do it. But he would rather have been a cop. He would rather have been just a regular guy. So yeah, I think, and that's kind of why he always just didn't want to be a part of it. But I was, like I said in the chat, if you actually want to be active, you should just go sign for the Tiger in Canada or somebody. They get those guys out every 2 months. So if you want to be active, I think you can blame the promoter, but in the end, it's on you. If you go to your promoter
contract though too,
if you go to your promoter and say, "Hey, I know this and that," but if you're willing to just fight all the time, they probably throw you on something. I always think the fighters, you can get complacent yourself and end up blaming everybody, but sometimes you got to look in the mirror and say, "Hey, if I truly wanted to get out more, I could probably get out more."
I think it's kind of a weird two-way street, though, where a lot of these guys, because the purses they've been getting, would find it very, very hard to go down and maybe make 6 figures to fight on those cards. It's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of these guys, especially if they're still competing at a top level. But the purses are out of control, and that's why there's so few of these of these PVC cards. And it's a lot of these guys have had their careers go stagnant, but and it's a shame. So,
well, that definitely happened here because he was busy. He was busy up until he started getting the bigger fights with the bigger purses, and then it all slowed down to 1 fight a year, 2 fights 18 months, and that's the problem. That's the problem. You're getting paid so much you can't go back. So the idea of going to an Eye of a Tiger promotion, which is in theory a great idea, but he doesn't want to box for $35,000. Not when he's been getting $350,000. So
no, I wasn't talking about he should go now. I'm talking about that's where the route you should go though is everybody wants to get on these big promotional companies. If I would sign for those guys if I was younger instead of, because if you want to get active and you want to build a career, but that's another story. I'm talking about people just, you take that, you want to sign for the big company, but sometimes that's not the best. And then you get swallowed up, and he got swallowed up. He's not even, he's nobody. The only reason he's on this card is because Arizona and the Benavidez. They got, he's not a guy that PBC cares much about. And then you kind of get pushed to the back, and then your career's screwed.
Yeah, if you end up banking $500,000 this year, and all you did was have to go those 12 rounds, well, shit, there's worse things than that. It's pretty. I don't know. I'll tell you this, Des, if there was one win on the resume of Ramos that stands out for me, this is the one I would give you. It would be the fact that he was able to stop Vladimir Hernandez, and he did it in 6 rounds. Now, Vladimir Hernandez, he's one of those guys you want to talk about an interesting record when you're talking about a 16-6 guy. Well, his first loss, remember, this 154-pound fighter now. His first loss was a 12-round fight against a 13-1 fighter at light heavyweight. Okay, he lost his next fight coming down to middleweight, and then he started reeling off wins, and then he lost again. His only other stoppage victory was to Israel Madrimov in his debut. If you want us to talk about someone else who has some real quality, he lost a decision to Soleimane Sissoko, he's a decent enough fighter, all in all. And then he had a few wins. He had that back-to-back wins over Alfredo Angulo and then Julian Williams. And then that's when Ramos stopped him there. And, he's pulled off a couple of other good victories after that as well. He had that fight with Troy Isley that was close, where if it would have been a 10-round fight, he very well might have got the victory. So I think that's something that stands out to me when you and Israel Madrimov are the only guys who've stopped a dude of this caliber, where you need to break down their resume to really understand him. That's where I would rate him. And it's tough because, he's at 160 pounds. But I would say, if I had to guess what his next fight is, it's going to be Erislandy Lara.
Yeah, that works out for him.
That's what
that works out for him.
And that's, if he can beat Lara, I mean, that's a hell of a W there. And if you're talking about an aging guy, I mean, he's reeled off a hell of a lot of victories there. But Ramos, I mean, if you want a chance to avenge, that thought that you lost the Lubin fight to people who are just looking at your resume and didn't watch the fight, which he probably won 8-4, if we're being honest, that's his chance. And I like it for him. Hopefully they get him out again this year. And hopefully PBC keeps these other guys active. Because it is just absolutely ridiculous at the end of the day how they're keeping these guys from doing anything once a year when you're in your mid-20s, the prime of your boxing career. Come on, guys, let's get it together. Justin, I think you, of all people, probably might have caught some of the undercard that was not on the pay-per-view portion of that. Kermel Motan pulling off another victory as his star just keeps on rising. I assume he made weight this time around. Daniel Blancas on there. Jose Benavidez coming back and picking up a victory as well. Yoniel Hernandez. Anything on there that you think is worth talking about?
Yeah, Motan just blitzed through his guy, which was just a body bag. There you go. That guy had he looked good. We had Olivo versus Cuello. I think that was the main event of the non-pay-per-view part. That was a good fight. If people want to go back and watch that, that was really interesting because Cuello was like the 14-0. He was the favorite, the 11 knockout guy. And then Olivo really put him down hard. And Cuello, I had Olivo up. I thought Olivo was winning the fight. And then I think it was the 12th round.
The 10th.
Yeah, 10th. Yeah, Friday, 10th. It was only 10 rounds. He come back and landed some vicious body shots and stopped him. So that was an interesting fight because I think he had to pull that out. I had him losing the fight if he didn't, and then he knocked him out. So that was a good fight. He turned it around because that would have really set his career back because he was the guy they were pushing. But I think Olivo could come again. We'll see him fight again because he put in a really good performance.
He was down on one card 82-88, another one 84-86, and 83-87.
Yeah, so I thought he had to pull that out. He did. And those were vicious body shots he was landing. And you could see at the end of the 9th round that he was coming, that he was starting to get there. And I didn't think he would have enough time, but he did. I didn't think he would have enough time to finish him, but those were some good shots. And I will definitely watch both guys again because they're both entertaining. We'll see them both come again. Cuello, I think he showed a lot of there's a lot of deficiencies there, a lot of things, but hey, he did show he could still punch. That punch is for real, that it wouldn't, so that's still there, and he showed it. So yeah, that was a good fight.
All right. And James, I know you got to hop out of here, but if you got a moment, I don't know if you caught Adam Azim and Sergey Lipinets, but if that's something you want to touch on before you bounce, feel free. Otherwise, thanks for coming on with us tonight.
No, man, it's been great coming on again. I know it's been a good few weeks, man. Feels like ages, but I managed to catch the Azim fight, and I was very impressed. I feel like he's got a very capable left hand. He can pretty much do whatever he wants with that, like hooking, feinting, uppercutting, bracing, measuring distance. And then the fluidity and the snap and whip on his punches. He was brutally accurate in that fight last night. And Lipinets, he didn't stop trying, and he shipped an awful lot of punishment. I think Azim looks like he's like there's a showboating quality to what he does, but it's not like, you know, anything outrageous. It just feels like he's kind of expressing himself in there a lot. He's very creative, and you see a lot of unconventional combinations and sequences coming out of him. Very confident, very relaxed, and you know, he had a massive size advantage in there as well, and he was just willing to experiment. And I thought he was brilliant, to be honest, and I'm looking forward to seeing him again. So on that note, I think I'll leave you because I've got to do an airport run for some family members. But yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks for joining us today, and you take care of yourself, James. We appreciate you, sir.
Later.
I'll see you later, man. Take care, guys. See you later.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I was out celebrating birthday with my girlfriend and chilling out in the hot springs. It was a good time, so I missed this one. But apparently, it sounded like this fight should have just been ended much earlier, and that there was no point in Lipinets taking the ass whooping he took down the stretch. Your thoughts on that sentiment, Justin?
Definitely. This was, I think, Dez will understand. This is the definition of let's find a guy that's going to make him look good. And Lipinets was that guy because he just chased him the whole time, exactly what Azim wanted. This was the prime time guy you want to really build your guy and make him look good, because Lipinets had his head was right there. Azim, I don't think Azim, if he missed a punch, it was because he wanted to miss a punch. His uppercut was just taking Lipinets' head right off. He cannot miss with it. I think there's times where he might have hit like 4 in a row with the uppercut. He just put a beating on Lipinets. And then the knockdown was simply because Lipinets was just chasing him around the ring. And then he hit him with a beautiful counter when Lipinets was just running right at him. And it was just really good work. He put it on him. I think me and you talked about, I think everybody who's ever watched a boxing match knew that he was going to just beat the brakes off of Lipinets. They probably should have stopped it 2 or 3 rounds before it got as far as it did. Lipinets' face was just swollen up. He was beat up. He wasn't going to turn the fight around. I guess his only hope was that Azim kept hitting him in the nuts, and they were eventually going to just get him the disqualification, because Azim, I think Dez knows, he hit him with some horrifically low body nut shots. I mean, there was like 2 or 3 really low bad shots. But Azim, they got what they wanted. They got the perfect opponent, and now I think it's time you're going to have to step him, because there's no point of fighting these Lipinets or these gatekeeper guys, because he's just going to piece them up. The only thing I would say about Azim in this performance is he does hang his chin a little bit too much. It is there to get hit by a better fighter, but besides that, he did exactly what he was supposed to do.
He probably has a height advantage, didn't he?
Yeah.
You
he
get
does.
away with that a little bit more against a shorter fighter, especially when their reflexes are dulled.
Yeah, so what Dez can tell you what he thinks, but yeah, it was just a simple workout.
Yeah, Des, feel free to get your input on that one. Like, again, all I'm hearing is, that was a bit unnecessary.
Yeah, there's a few things to unpack here. I was a little bit concerned. I thought it might be a bit of a cowboy job. Lipinets flew in to London Wednesday night / Thursday morning. So from the West Coast into London, that's a hard flight to recover from in 3 or 4 days. I didn't like the corner I saw last night. I thought I didn't think the corner read the room particularly well, and I don't think the corner looked after their fighter particularly well. Sometimes corners can enjoy being in the spotlight, and I think that happened a little bit last night. I think Sergio took far too many punches, and he went probably 2 rounds that he didn't have to go through, and he was never going to win the fight. And Adam, by round 6, had really found the measure of Lipinets. And Lipinets is a very poor man's Liam Parrow at this stage in his career. So he's been brought over to get beat, and he did get beat. He got beat soundly. Adam's got really good feet. He judges distance. Now, I don't know if he's a great judger of distance, that his feet are so good that he keeps good distance. And what he does, he goes back as you advance and he throws these whipping, slashing punches. And that's why he cuts people and he breaks noses. And sometimes he catches you with a long left hook as you're coming in and he's stepping out. It almost sort of check hooks it a little bit because he whips it round and spins off. He's going to be a hard guy to beat, Adam, if you give away height and age and if you're flat-footed. So I don't want to put too much demand on Adam Azim at the moment, but perhaps they should put the brakes on a little bit because he's topping bills, he's getting prime time slots on big networks, but he's still only 13-0. So I don't want to push him too fast and I don't want to make too many demands of him. Perhaps we've got a year of this. And if they can get Adam out for another 5 times in the next 12 months, defending a European title, fighting good operators like Limpinets that are coming down, that have been there, I think in a year's time, we could probably ask a lot more of Adam. But it's a bit unfair at the moment because he's still a novice. He's coming out of a novice phase, 13-0. He's a young kid. I think we've got to enjoy this moment, but I'd like to see Adam fight guys where it's just leveled off a little bit more. At the moment, they're bringing him in with 2 days to acclimatise from a weight up at the wrong age. They're flat-footed. All right, you've had that one. I think we should find a little bit more out about Adam at this phase. I don't want to jack him in the deep end, by the way. And I'm not calling for a Dalton Smith fight. I don't see a problem with it, but I'm not calling for it. But I want to see Adam's opponents just step up a little bit now. Limpinets, you could argue, is a sidestep or a slight step up from O'Hara Davis. And let's keep doing that over the next 12 months. And in a year's time, we'll see what we're left with. But certainly,
sorry.
Go on, mate. No, go
I was thinking, is him getting rushed basically a product of the fact that Boxer doesn't have anybody else? And that he might end up being sacrificed just because
no,
there's not a they don't have. I mean, you think he'll get rushed and maybe he's getting headlined more just because they don't have a lot of options, or because
no, you're right. Like so over here, we think Sky might be either coming away from boxing, focusing on just a big pay-per-view events. We're not quite sure if Boxer are going to get their contract renewed. We don't know if Sky are going to throw the tender out to 5 or 6 different promoters and show us what you've got type of thing. It feels like a little bit of the last days of Rome at Sky. There's a lot of crazy decisions going on over there. But one thing that won't happen is Adam Azim won't be rushed. And no one's going to bully the McGuigans. They're going to do it how they want to do it, when they want to do it. And if it's not on Sky, the McGuigans will take Azim over to TNT or to DAZN. They're going to have options. Adam's a talent, and he's an exciting talent. And like I say, he's got really good hands, really good feet. He throws really good punches. Whenever anyone goes in with Adam, he seems to do a really good number on them. And I think if we look at Adam's resume, like we saw a step up with Paulson, then we saw it with Davis, and it's Limpinets. Okay, let's just see a slight step up from there over the next year. I'm very cautious, though. I don't want him to be rushed. He won't be rushed. I don't think the Dalton Smith fight's going to happen because I think Dalton Smith is in a bit of a hurry. I don't think Adam Azim is. So I think Azim will steadily climb over the next 12 months. And I think in a year's time, we're probably going to see a 20-0 Adam Azim make a big splash. But for the next year, we've probably got to enjoy these development fights. To answer your question, Justin, no one will be rushing Adam Azim. He's got too many good people around him.
Yeah, because there's no point. He's too young to worry about.
He's very young, yeah.
Yeah, and you know how it is. There's certain guys you can rush, and the McGuigans they're smart enough to know what they've got. I mean, he's not a 30-year-old Cuban with this. He's like, you don't have to rush these guys. You don't need to rush them. You're only hurting yourself if you push him further than he needs to be, because guys this young, if they get beat up this young, that could really just ruin the whole career. That could end what they had.
over here right now, we've got 3 light welters. We've got Catterall, Dalton Smith, and Adam Azim. And everybody wants to see the Adam Azim Dalton Smith fight. And I wouldn't be against it, but I can see why the McGuigans are saying we don't quite need that just yet. Even if we win it, we don't quite want to be there just yet. I can see what, because they're very good boxing people, Barry and Shane, and they'll take it their way, and they won't be rushed and they won't be bullied. So I don't expect to see that fight purely because it doesn't suit them. And there's an awful lot of hurdles to overcome to make that fight. I just don't think they're in the business of doing all that. I don't think they're in the business of moving loads of furniture for other people. They're going to do it their way. And I think in a year's time, Justin, I think we're going to get the best we're going to see the best of Adam Azim. But Sean Porter said something last night. He was in Wembley Arena because he was doing some sort of commercial tour. Adam Azim's very young. He's making just a splash. Just gradually build on that, and let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. And I think Adam Azim will be typical of that. I think he'll be steady as they go. And in the next 12 to 18 months, we'll see Adam Azim where we probably want him to be now. But he's too young for that at the minute. I wouldn't rush it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they match him going forward. And I wouldn't, again, like you said, they're going to move him at the right pace. You got to move him accordingly. But he has skills on this one. Unfortunately, going in against a shop-worn aging fighter can provide you a little bit more appearance of value than actually exists. So we shall see. We shall see. But let's Rob, before we bring Rob in, why don't you run down the rest of that card for me, Des, and we'll round off this conversation and go from there. What else did you see on that one?
Jamie TKV fought Michael Webster. It was scrappy. It was messy. Webster isn't a knockover, but he's a type of heavyweight you've got to beat if you want to have any aspirations of winning a British title or a Commonwealth title or beyond. So I've been watching TKV for a few years since he turned over, and I just think he's leveled off. He don't seem to be getting any better for me. He needs to do a lot more, and what I'm seeing just isn't enough. So Jamie TKV, I'm going to put him in the group of Solly Dakers, Dave Allen, Johnny Fisher, Nick Webb. I think that's where he belongs. And if he can prove to me he's better than that lot, go and beat him. But until then, I just think TKV's leveled off. And there's something, either it's a mindset, a mentality, or an ability thing. But that's where I'd put TKV right now. At 9-1 with 6 stoppages, I'd put Jamie TKV in with the Dave Allens, the Johnny Fishers, the Nick Webbs, and the Solly Dakers of the world. So let's see where you are at area level, and let's see if you can get out of that. An interesting one we saw at cruiserweight was Scott Forrest against Ariel Ignet. Now, I was told about Ignet because he comes from the Peacock Gym, and I had friends of mine say that he can punch, and he's dangerous because he's got long arms and he can throw long shots. He can catch you at the end of a shot. And I wasn't able to do it, but I fancy putting a tenner on Ignet just before the fight. But I was doing a few things and I missed the boat. And Ignet stopped Forrest in the first round. And Scott was very tight. He was compact and he was always moving. But there must be a bit of inexperience in that group, because someone should have said to Scott, look, he's a tall, rangy puncher. Just go and have a look at him for the first round. Just go and feel him out a bit. But Scott didn't. He pressed him from the very first bell. And he got caught with a long sort of, I don't know if it was an uppercut or a hook or a bit of both. It wobbled him. His legs went a little bit. He done a funny dance. No disrespect. And then Ignet jumped on him, and the referee had seen enough and stopped him on his feet. It was a great win for Ignet, who now goes to 9-0 with 8 KOs. And the guys down at the Peacock will have plans for him. And Scott will have to come back to the drawing board. But Scott, you can see he's a sparring partner. And I think he's got to change that a little bit. He's got to start thinking himself like a boxer now, and not just this Mike Tyson impression of hands up, head down, keep moving and pressing. You're too easy to find when you do that. Chief support, and this is one I would like to touch on. I'd like to know what the guys in the chat think. I spoke to Joe Burns and Joseph last night about this, and they know a bit more about our British champion Callum Simpson than what I do. I'm not over keen on him, and I might be biased because I grew up on super middleweights. You know, super middleweights was the standout division in this country, and we've had some very, very good ones. We've had groundbreaking super middles that changed the game. And we've had really good super middleweights that never won world titles. And when I look at Callum Simpson, I just don't see that caliber of fighter. He looks very novice-y to me. And I think, without being disrespectful to the part of the country he comes from, I think if Callum was to come from a bigger city like Manchester, London, Liverpool, I don't think he'd win an area belt. And I think about guys like Tony Dobson, Brian McGee, Dean Francis, James Cook, John Ryder. Them guys would have taken Callum Smith apart at British level. So I understand he's a ticket seller, and I understand that's where we're going a little bit in British boxing now with the Nathan Heaney's and the Johnny Fishers, and Callum Simpson might hit that sort of geographical point up there. And he is going to get big fights because he can sell tickets. But I think Callum's got the British and Commonwealth super middleweight titles. I'm not quite sure how long he holds on to them. I think with Callum, it's going to be about matching him very, very sensibly and keeping him at that level. If you go and look, super middleweight at world level isn't much to sing about. But if you creep him up, I think he'll be found that pretty quick. But there are some interesting fights at domestic level. And I don't know what the guys think, but I think that they're going to look for a Zach Parker or a Jeffers, because they've just hired the Oakwell Stadium, which is a 25-seater stadium for the summer, and they want to sort of parade Callum Smith and give him a big coming home party. But I think an interesting one would be Liam Cameron, if they can find the right weight, because there's a local rivalry there, and Liam Cameron's pretty hot at the moment, as is Callum. But I think what they might do, they might bring Nathan Heaney up, because Nathan Heaney's another big ticket seller, and between Nathan and Callum, they will sell 25,000 tickets at Oakwell. So that could be a good one for Callum. So I'm not sold on Callum yet, but I'm waiting. And that's about it, mate.
I thought I saw something that Heaney's having a farewell fight and that he's done after this one.
I don't know about that, but that wouldn't surprise me. I understand that as well. He's just been beat last time out. But I think if they've got two different promoters, but if the two promoters could come together and say, look, you've got a kid that can sell 6,000 tickets and I've got a kid that can sell 4,500, and we can put an undercard on to sell 25,000 tickets, I think that's a good one. And there isn't probably a lot at middleweight that Nathan hasn't seen or done. And he's a tall kid. He must go just under 6 foot, if not 6 foot. And I think maybe they might suggest to him, why don't you go up to 12 stone, 168, and why don't you fight for the British and Commonwealth titles against Callum Simpson? Callum Simpson isn't a hang 'em, shoot 'em, burn 'em champion. He's pretty novice. He's pretty basic. Nathan would fancy that, and I'm sure Callum would fancy it with Nathan, because these are the same ilk. They're two pretty novice guys that can sell a ton load of tickets. I'm not saying that fight is going to happen, but I think it's a good fight and it would capture a lot of imagination. And they're not too far from each other either.
Not a bad shout. Not a bad shout. It's especially if you think that's a winnable fight for Heaney. I think the reason, just kind of judging off.
Sorry. Before I don't want to be too dirty on Callum. That's a winnable fight for Callum too.
Yeah, I think when it came to Heaney, like, he really had this vision that he was a potential world champion someday, and when he got that realization that he just doesn't have the level in his last fight, he's just kind of packing it in. So, some people, when they feel like they can't achieve their dreams, they just kind of retreat into normalness.
And I would like to say something about Callum's opponent last night, Elvis. I loved everything about Elvis. I loved his press conferences. I loved his attitude. I loved his weigh-in. I loved his outfit. I loved his ring walk. I absolutely adored his music. But unfortunately, the kid couldn't fight. He had a record similar to Tommy Fury's. And he was never going to beat a Callum Simpson. Even last night's version of Callum Simpson, tell me, sort of boxed on at short notice to sort of help the promoter out. But yeah, if we can get Callum Simpson in with someone that we can recognise, someone who we know has got a similar level to himself, I think Liam Cameron would be a step up. I don't think he beats a Liam Cameron, but I think Nathan Heaney would be a good fight. I think Zach Parker would be a good fight as well.
Thomas Newman says Shalom mentioned that they're looking at Pacheco versus Simpson in Matchroom versus Boxer Show. I don't know much much about Simpson, but you're getting thrown in some deep waters there, and I lean towards him getting the shit beat out of him in that fight.
Yeah, he don't go nowhere near Pacheco.
Yeah, he's a quality fighter, but interesting. It sometimes, honestly, in situations like that, Des, I feel like say if they're having like a 5-on-5 show, and sometimes it just doesn't go the way that you want it to. But sometimes I think that each fighter, like each promoter, has a fighter they agree kind of to throw to the wolves as a sacrificial lamb, and every once in a while they come out of it, right? But I think in this case, Simpson would be that sacrificial lamb that they're tossing up on their side.
Yeah, let me be clear. I'm not saying Thomas Newman is wrong. He don't get things wrong. Shalom probably has said that, but there's no way in the world they're going to put a ticket seller like Callum Simpson, who's very novice-y, who throws arm punches, whose feet are a little bit sticky. They're not going to put him in against Pacheco. You're going to have a sacrificial lamb, but it ain't going to be your big ticket seller. Simpson goes in against kids of just below British level that have been brought up a bit. Not quite as bad as last night, but similar. You're going to get him in with kids that he can beat. And I think that's a Nathan Heaney. And I think it's perhaps a Zach Parker. I think it's a Jeffers. I think it's one of them type of guys. But yeah, I'm not saying Thomas Newman's wrong when he says that. He absolutely heard that. But they're not going to put him nowhere near Pacheco. It'll be Parker, Jeffers. It might be a Haney, it might be a Cameron, but it'd be one of them fights that on a very good day, if he trains right and gets 12 weeks notice, Callum Simpson could win it because he's worth protecting. He's a good ticket seller.
Yeah, that's one of those things that like it just feels like he was just like putting a sentence together, and that's where he ended up. But good for Shalom. Dream big, buddy. Speaking of people who dream big, Mr. Rapp and Rob Callie joining us here. Rob, you got a weekend of fights that I think that you could appreciate, or at least a card of fights that you could appreciate. Benavidez, Morel, something that folks who follow the sport certainly can sink their teeth into. Tell me your thoughts on the fights that you did catch this weekend.
Yeah, I managed to catch up with everything, which is rare enough. But I think I had a bit more time this weekend just for relaxation, so I managed to kind of catch up on all the fights today. Thoroughly enjoyed the Benavidez Morel fight. You look at Benavidez and there's so much stuff he does wrong, and Morel was able to expose some of that because I think Benavidez is hittable. And I saw some training footage of him during the week where he's out with Rigondeaux down in Miami, and they were doing some work on his feet, and his feet are fucking terrible as well. So he's got plodding feet. He's easy to hit, and still you can't do anything with him because he's just a colossus. Like even his technique, the way he throws the shots, they're effective, but they look like shit. But they're all getting through. I sound like I'm running him down, but I'm actually paying him a compliment. He's for a guy that fights with such a weird style, he's such a hard guy to beat, and there's really only two in the division that can do anything with him, and they're both our Eastern European friends who are tied up with each other for the rematch. There's talk that Benavidez and Bivol maybe the fight that's made next. I have separate thoughts on that one. I even though I thought Bivol won the first fight, I don't know what's going to be left of him after the second outing with Beterbiev. Morel can come again. I thought he showed himself. He's a little bit green. He decided to dig in and bang. He got the knockdown against Benavidez. Well, looked like a knockdown. Certainly a good punch thrown, and he rocked him earlier in the fight as well. And he came to fight. He didn't want to take a backward step. And I think he'll learn from that. And when he gets a bit cuter, he'll be a real, and the division kind of clears up a little bit, he'll be a real force to be reckoned with at 75. But two big busters went together, met in the center of the ring, had a right out fight. Benavidez just swarms you, doesn't he? Like, it's just work rate as well. Like, he's such a fucking scary guy to fight because you've got to be so fit to go and try and live with him because you're going to get drowned at some stage. Like, so impressed with him. I can see why people don't want any part of that smoke with Benavidez. But as I said, he's probably any other time he'd be the best 75-pounder in the division. It just so happens that there's another two guys from Eastern Europe who have a say in that, but thoroughly entertaining every time Benavidez is out. And he's starting to get his due, I think, in the wider boxing mainstream as well now as a real star. So a really, really good fight. The Pitbull Cruz fight was just fucking what it says. just what you expected. You know what I mean? The two boys are going to have. I thought Cruz was the rightful winner. Just very tight fight. Could have gone either way.
The 98-92 was a real travesty when it came to Fierro and not giving him credit.
Yeah, I thought it was like 6'4". Fucking, I didn't think it was. It was massively, massively wide. But those two serving up a potential fight of the year candidate. I always hate that shout so early in the year because we don't know what way it's going to go. But yeah, a cracking fight, absolutely cracking fight. What more do you want? All action styles. Don't want to take a backward step to or fro action. That's kind of what you want. It's one of those incidental value cards, really, isn't it? Stephen Fulton Figueroa rematch. I had tipped Fulton to beat Figueroa the first time around, and I think I was in the minority at that stage. I didn't really know what we were going to get when I saw Stephen Fulton wearing a pair of denim print boxing shorts with a pair of Timberland style boxing boots. I was like, this is going to go one way or the other. Like, he's going out here as a meme, or he really comes and means business. And I thought he's just side to side style, his shot selection was excellent, and I thought he really showed that he's a really good fighter, which kind of again boosts Inoue stock because Fulton was on some great results, momentum going into that Inoue fight, and then has been able to recapture it since then. Likewise, Figueroa, I guess when he lost to Fulton, he was able to gain some kind of notable wins and put himself back in the favourite spot. But neither of those two guys together could beat Inoue, and that's just how good Inoue is. I kind of missed last week breakdown when I suppose we were covering Inoue. Briefly touch on it. Like, I keep saying the same things every time I watch him. Like, he's so good at controlling distance. He puts you where he wants you. The technique on his punches is second to none, and he probably won't get beaten by anyone other than Father Time or one of these crazy Turkey Al Sheikh fucking jump up to weight class matches that seem to be presenting themselves in talks as we move forward. But yeah, no, good night's action. Adam Azim versus Lipnitz. I think it's a nice statement win. He took him apart. He got the stoppage. Lipnitz is a tough guy. We saw Mikey Garcia send him to the fucking Shadow Realm years ago. Mikey himself probably could have went on to be one of the best lightweights to light welterweights if he hadn't have fucked around with his career and made just absolute trash business decisions towards the end. But that's a good benchmark for Azim on going forward. It's a right good name on his record. He's got some good rounds in there with him, and he's got the definitive stoppages. It's what you want from the prospects, really. You want to see him get tested, and then if the stoppage is there, you want to see him get it. Like, so, yeah, good night out for Adam Azim. Nice for him that he gets to do it on the platform. And yeah, decent weekend altogether. It wasn't really too much. There was no shite really, or no stinking decisions or anything like that, or major controversial points. Just a nice weekend of boxing. So,
just a couple of really stupid cards that didn't impact the final decision. Like, the right guy got it, but how did you only give one round to Morrell? That's stupid.
Well, it's probably something to do with the fucking betting line in Vegas or something. I don't know. You know what I mean?
God only fucking knows what these people are doing sometimes. I wish they watched the same sport that I did. It's thoroughly entertaining at times. So, right on, Rob. Well, thanks for that. And it's I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Des, was there a card on Friday? I think with Janae Boston or something like that on there?
Yes, there was. I mean, it was a DAZN card. It was at the Indigo nightclub at the O2. I never got a chance to see it, but we spoke about it a lot because there's a lot of local kids on there. But Janae Boston got a draw with, someone remind me of the kid's name, is it Fawaz? Yeah, that's all I can tell you really, mate. Yeah, it was more of a next generation, more getting trainers have been able to get their kids out. It wasn't a lot of people there. Wasn't a lot of tickets sold, but it wasn't a big event. But it was just getting kids out on a Friday night.
Right on. Justin, is that one of those random things you found your way into?
Sad to say, yes. It actually,
please continue.
it actually worked out that way because I was off Thursday and Friday, so I was actually just sitting here. But I mean, I wouldn't be really excited if I was Eddie if these were his next gen kids, because I don't think none of them really impressed. So I hope he's not putting a lot of faith in these guys being the future. But that's all I'll say about that. I really didn't. I don't see a big future for anybody that was on that card.
Well, that's a shame. We do wish him the best, and fighters can develop, but yeah, I wish him the best. How sad! What a rundown that was. So, but yeah, we'll get into the fights that we have coming up. Clarissa Shields is fighting tonight, and I'll probably tune into that. I think that starts about, I don't know, 4 hours from now. So we'll check that out, maybe a little less than that. Then on Thursday, there's going to be a card from Montreal with a lot of these fighters that they're building up. Let's see here. Mavladin Slanov is going to be there against Muhammad Mamoun. I've seen Mamoun fight a couple of times, I believe. Christopher Guerrero, Dennis Dotti, Mehmet Unal against Ezequiel Osvaldo Moderna. I've seen Moderna many times. Isn't Moderna the one that beat the snot out of the lesser talented Atoma brother?
Moderna's the one with the good. Moderna's the one with the good jab, Maddie. I think.
Score one for Rob. Score one for Rob. Well done, sir.
Yeah, I think he is the Argentinian guy that beat him up.
Albert Ramirez, he's a pretty decent prospect there against Marco Kalik. Bakadir Jalalev is going to be on there as well. He's taking on David Spilmont. So yeah, that's one for you there with the Canadian action, as we always love it. Then we're going to have a card on Friday. This is going to be coming from Yorkshire. So let's see here. What do we got on here? I think there's a European title fight on there. Daniel Blenda dos Santos against Shakan Pitters. Shaquille Thompson is in there against TBA, who's getting a lot of work on here. Taz Nadim against Jaskirat Singh. Naphtali Nemhard against Harry Matthews. Calvin Moyo against Berman Sanchez. And then Reese Mold is against TBA. Dante Dixon against TBA. Lewis Booth against TBA. And on down the line. Des, do you know anything of this card? Any thoughts on it?
I know about the main event. Shakan, I think Shakan retired, I think maybe 2 years ago, but he's come back. He's had one fight in 2024, and he's going in against, I think he's the French European champion. He's not a puncher, Dos Santos, but it's going to be a hard fight. If we remember, was me and you talking about Dos Santos beating Thomas Ferrer in his last one? And he did. We wasn't expecting him to do it, but he did actually do it. And now Shakan Peters has got him. I don't think Shakan Peters wins it. I think it's going to be a very hard fight for him to get round. I think the Frenchman wins it on points. He's not a puncher, but he's very fair, very capable operator. Shakan's not been very active, and Shakan himself, he's probably more suited to just somewhere between English title and British title. And Shakan's not a puncher himself, so it's going to be a hard night's work next week.
10 rounds, he says, or 12. It's a European title fight, so you get 12 rounds.
12 rounds, yeah.
All right, so good for us. For anyone who's around to watch that on Friday afternoon, stateside, evening for you all over there. And then let's see here. We're gonna go into the afternoon on Saturday, and we're gonna have a fight from Manchester. Oh boy, we're looking forward to this one. Actually, there might be a couple of decent ones on here. Let's see here. Nathan Heaney, the aforementioned, taking on Sofian Kati. Jack Rafferty against Reese McMillan with the British junior welterweight title up for grabs. Masood Abdullah and Zach Miller. Willie Hutchinson and Zach Parker. Rob, give me your thoughts on this undercard. We'll get to the main event in just after we get done with that.
Standard enough of undercards, a couple of 50-50 fights on it.
Hutchinson against Parker could be decent enough. Didn't Parker have to pull out of a fight early because he was injured or some shit like
back
that?
injury or something,
Against
wasn't it?
Ryder?
It was
Yeah,
against John
Ryder beat
Ryder,
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Ryder was getting on top of him, I think, in that fight too, wasn't he? Ryder was actually went into that the underdog, which is fucking typical enough in Ryder's career, wasn't it?
Correct.
But he was getting on top of him, I feel, in that. But yeah, I think so. I'd probably edge Zach Parker in that one, but it'd be a good fight.
All right, Des, do you have any thoughts on this one? The undercard and whole?
Yeah, I like that fight. I think it's a good show. I like that fight. I'm not sure if Zach's been active enough to get over Willie Hutchinson. It all depends what type of Willie turns up. It's a good fight there. Hutchinson v Parker is a really good fight, and we've spoke about Parker potentially being the opponent for Callum Simpson in the summer at Oakdale. So that could be a good win for Zach Parker, but he's got to get past Willie Hutchinson. That's a hard fight for him. Chisora's fighting Otto Volin. If it's the Otto Volin that
wait on that. We'll get to the main event.
Sorry,
yeah, no worries.
Sorry.
Try to give him a script, Rob. You try to give him a script. I
think Hutchinson and Parker's as good as it gets. I'll tell you, I'm going to go with Hutchinson on that one because I don't think Parker's been active enough. But Parker was hot property once upon a time, and Rob's absolutely right. When John Ryder boxed Zach Parker, it was on a Frank Warren show. Frank Warren was building Zach Parker up to fight Canelo one day, and John wasn't meant to beat Zach Parker. I think Zach broke down after about round 2 or 3 with an injury, and John got the win, and he went on and kicked on for another part of his career. Good luck to John. So we'll see what Zach Parker's got left.
All right. And Justin, feel free. Let's see how deep your British boxing knowledge goes. Give me your rundown of the undercard.
I mean, I know the Hutchinson Parker fight. I don't really know the rest of the guys on there. And Heaney, I think Hutchinson will beat Parker. I've never been that impressed with Parker, but now you can let Dez have his main event if you want to, because he seems pretty excited about this big fight coming up on Saturday if he wants to talk about it.
Yeah, there you go, Des. Are you actually excited for this fight? We don't know if this is really Chisora's last fight, how this is all working out. But Wallen disappointed us last time out. So many of us were tapping him to beat Anthony Joshua, and he got basically smoked like a pack of cools. So how are you feeling this main event?
I think Chisora outlasts him. I think he outworks him, he outgrinds him, and I think Chisora wins a decision.
Chisora, okay. You think Chisora's going to win a decision in this one?
I do, yeah. I think he's going to outwork him, outgrind him, outfight him, outpunch him, outlast him, and I think he beats Otto Volin by decision. Yeah, the Volin that turned up against Anthony Joshua was a huge letdown. I don't know if he's been really well paid over the last 5 or 6 years. I don't know if he's just gone over the edge. I don't know if the Fury fight flattered him a little bit. But I didn't like him against Gasayev. I didn't like him against Joshua. And I can't see him out-fighting, out-punching, out-battling this war dog of Derek Chisora that does everything at one pace, does everything in straight lines. But I think Otto Volin might be tailor-made for him at this stage in Volin's career.
Okay.
You weren't expecting that, was you? You weren't expecting that one, was you?
No. There you go. Let's do it. Rob, slip in there. What are you feeling on this? Otto used to be our boy, and you let us down under the bright lights.
And if you let us down, then we never forgive you. You know that way. So that's boxing public are fickle. We liked Otto Volin. He was something different in the heavyweight business, wasn't he, than these typical opponents like a Derek Chisora, if you like a Dillian White. He was offering us a different dynamic. He was a big, tough fucker. Nordic nightmare, not like the other fucking Nordic nightmare, but he was a big guy. He gave Tyson Fury a really good fight. Maybe that was a false measure of what his stock was, because I think, if I remember correctly, that was the night that Fury got the bad cut, and that was the night also that he got shot at Ben Davidson, wasn't it? There was talks that Ben Davidson's style of coaching for the Wilder 1 fight were being criticised by the likes of Freddie Roach at the time, when they thought he should step on the gas and go after Wilder, and Davison was dead against it. he had Fury a little bit lighter and he had him up on his toes. And I think the consensus was, especially from the dad at the time, who a lot of people were fucking right off as a lunatic. But I think, you know, he did have some fucking valuable insights for his son. And that was maybe that performance kind of volume was flattering to deceive a little bit. He certainly didn't offer anything against Joshua, who ironically was back with fucking Ben Davison in his corner, and they dismantled volume. But he looked like he didn't fancy it that night. So I think Days is onto something in terms of Cesaro, and that he won't go away. He'll make it totally ugly. He'll fight one pace, as he says. Um, and he'll kind of fucking, the longer the fight goes and the slower it gets and the messier it gets, the more it suits Derek Chisora's style of that lying on you and leaning on the ropes and just doing enough to get through, body shot, dogging it out. And honestly, I love Derek Chisora to a degree. Like, I think he's been great value over the years, but I think his expiry date was somewhere around 5 years ago. Maybe around the Usyk loss. I think it's time. He should have probably called time. He hung in there. He got another big, massive payday against Tyson Fury. He's had other big fights since. Um, but he's really taken up bandwidth in the heavyweight division that could go to somebody else. Like, you look at the fucking likes of Martin Bacoli, who's been, him and Billy Nelson have been trying to get a fucking big fight for years. Finally gets one against Jared Anderson and puts himself in the mix. Meanwhile, Chisora's been going around selling all these tickets off the same old tired fucking shtick, isn't it? It's the same old thing. We've seen it before. War Chisora, he likes a bit of Nigel Farage. He does a good IFL interview. He could fucking say anything to sell the fight. Yeah, but it's old and it's tired and it's boring. And at this stage, what does a fight with Derek Chisora and Otto Wallin do for the sport? What does it do for the heavyweight division, apart from line the two of their pockets? So I hate to sound totally cynical and against this fight, but I've had me share of Chisora. Like, and what he's got, like, the guy, like, let's fucking, you know, I don't care what fellas do. They're entitled to fight if they want to. They get paid massively for it. That's the risk versus the reward or whatever. But Derek Chisora's in bad nick, I think, physically, in terms of his speech and stuff. And regardless of whether Otto Wallin is a dangerous or a top heavyweight, he's still a big guy, like, and they're still going to go in and trade. And you know, Chisora fights with his face as well. It's not like he's without a wisp, like, or anything. So just the more times you see him out, the more impact it's going to have on his health, and he's going to deteriorate. So, like, a lot of people, I know you can't tell Derek Chisora anything he's going to fight today, but I just really think they need people around him now. Like, and the promoters are kind of culpable in this too, with these kind of matches. I don't know what this does. As I said, other than line Derek Chisora's pockets and give him yet again another fucking payday. So credit to the guy. He's made massive amounts of money, tons of money in the sport, made way more money than his ability suggests he should have done on paper. But I'm not one fucking bit interested in this, honestly, not one bit. I think this is going to be a fucking shit fight. Messy, horrible to watch, and just fucking predictable. So yeah, nothing getting me out of my seat for sure.
I'm trying to think what Chisora's record against Southpaws is in general. I got to kind of go look at that one here. I'm kind of curious about that. Des, I see you're off mute. Did you have something that you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to say that I think that's Rob went for Chisora as well. So that's 2-2, and you weren't expecting that, was you, mate? 2-2.
He's the home fighter. He's the home fighter. I was kind of feeling that too. I'm trying to see here who he's fought.
I think Rob picked up on the thing that I said about Tyson Fury, and Rob made the better point. You know, over the last 5 years, what's Otto Wallin's body of work? You know, you look at the guys he's beaten. They've normally been washed up, chewed up, and they've been sort of powder punching heavyweights. Even the big puncher in Gassay, I mean, he turned up. He looked more cooked than what Wallin looked against Joshua that night. I don't think Wallin's done anything since Fury that suggests that he's someone you could back and get behind. And that night against Fury, it was a good performance. But Rob's absolutely right. Ben Davison was relieved of duties because he didn't understand that Tyson Fury's legs might have gone, and you can't get Tyson Fury up on his toes anymore. You can't get him fighting going backwards. And that caused a lot of problems in that camp. And Fury, on another night with another ref, might have got stopped and lost his heavyweight title that night. So I think, I think that fight might have flattered Otto Wallin, because I've not seen it since, I've got to say.
So this is the only thing I'm going to say thinking about this fight. So I'm going to go through these, and you know where he's won and where he's lost. So how's his record with southpaws, and how many has he fought? I mean, Joyce, orthodox; Washington, orthodox; Fury, switch, lost; Pulev, orthodox; Parker, orthodox; Usyk, southpaw, lost; Price, orthodox, I think; Spilka, orthodox. Hey, I think Wallen presents some different stuff for him. He hasn't had a lot of success against southpaws. I don't know. Do you guys have any argument against that point? Ah,
No argument there. But I don't think Volins is going to be that difficult, hard to find southpaw anyway. I think they're two fighters at a stage of an age that probably earn a lot more money than they ever thought they was going to earn. And I think we know what we're going to get with Derek Chisora, and that might just be enough to beat this version of Otto Wallin, who, let's be honest, has never pulled up trees.
Yeah. Now, listen, as well as that, if Wallin was to go out and stop Chisora, I don't think anybody would be surprised either. Like, I mean, fucking hell, what age is Chisora? Like, how many miles on the clock? I mean, when you look at the
he's
second
41,
fight,
Rob.
the second fight he had with Fury he had to be around maybe 30 at that stage. And Fury nearly killed him in that second fight. He nearly fucking killed him. I thought he was going to go end up in the hospital after watching that fight. I thought it took him ages to stop it. He nearly killed him, and Klitschko nearly killed him, and he's taken some severe beatings, and it's been in some real wars since then. So if Wallin does go out and this is finally the end, and he blasts his out, I hope he fucking takes him out with one shot, and it's not like a 9, 10, 11
prolonged
round
beating.
drubbing. Yeah, I don't want to see that. Like, I think I think in boxing now, there's a lot of noise from the Saudi regime, etc., about making the sport better and cleaning the sport up and stuff like that. And like, I think if you're doing that, you have to start looking at these kind of things and trying to stop these fucking types of fights getting sanctioned. Like, I'm fucking 41 years of age. I don't know how he's passing any medicals and stuff like that. And I really, really, really hate this Ben Eubank thing as well. I kind of can't believe this is going ahead the second time out. Like, anyway, that's a different point to get into. But I just think, hopefully, Cesaro comes out of it in one piece and finally fucking hangs it up. Like, I don't want to see him back out again after this. But I've been saying that for the last 7 years on here, so we'll see what happens.
Interesting point, Matty. When Derek Chisora won his first British title, he beat Danny Williams, and it was on the Michael Katsidis, Kevin Mitchell undercard, and that was at West Ham Football Stadium.
Holy shit, remember that?
Yeah, now look how long ago that was. That was in 2010. That was 15 years ago. So it'd already been.
That was when I had hopes and dreams. Shit.
When you had hopes and dreams, yeah.
But you got to think though. There's a reason why they chose Wallin for his last homecoming or his last whatever fight.
Yeah.
There has to be a reason why if Chisora has done so much for them, you figure they would have gave him a name, but maybe an easier name to finish with. I don't know. I think he's going to knock Wallin out. I don't know. I think he'll knock him out like late.
On that card, boxing, and think about all these guys, and they've all retired. Was Kevin Mitchell and Michael Katsidis, James DeGale, Frankie Gavin, Ricky Burns, Billy Joe Saunders, Ryan and Liam Walsh, and George Michael Carmen. They've all retired, long retired. Some of them have got into other careers since retirement, and Derek Chisora is still boxing.
Good old Frank Warren had 25 million fights on it, going on for 7 hours. Like, that's what you want. Boxing Nation days, that was, wasn't it?
Yes, Box Nation Day starts at 3:30, finishes at midnight. Yeah,
loved it. I remember watching that. I remember watching that live on TV. That card. Wasn't that the night that fucking Katsidis smashed Mitchell up, didn't he? And then they started, were they blaming who's moving into having problems with his missus or something afterwards in the fight afterwards? They were saying Mitchell was having personal issues or something, weren't they?
Yeah, very possibly. But I think that night was all about. Kevin was a brilliant amateur. Kevin was a fantastic amateur, really enjoyable to watch, and he turned pro. And people talk about Errol Graham and Tony Simpson. I still think Kevin Mitchell is the best Brit never to win a world title. I think he was brilliant. He had everything. And I remember seeing Kevin Mitchell at a press conference. He must have been about a 3-0 or a 4-0 novice. and the kid had star quality. He was young-faced. He had a head full of hair. He was well dressed. He could
Loved
punch.
around London, wasn't
He could say that again, Rob.
I said he was loved around London, wasn't he?
I've got to tell you, Rob, he could sell a ticket. Really could
Yeah.
sell a ticket. He really hit that. If he was ever going to get another Nigel Benn, it could have been Kevin Mitchell. And if you'd have just managed him, and if he'd have just made the right choices, I think Kevin Mitchell could have been a huge star in his country. But it wasn't to be. But he was for me the best British fighter never to win a world title. Very good fighter, Kevin Mitchell, with so much star quality.
Interesting. That might be a conversation that Steve might like to get into with for one of his special things that he does. Honestly, that sounds like a very interesting discussion. Huh. Anyways, I'll tell you what, guys. I'm going to make an argument here, and Justin, you might be more familiar with these fighters. The best card of the week is actually on Saturday, but it's going to be a Pro Box card. Let me so that I think the televised portion, you're gonna have 12-0 Michael Angeletti, who he's a very decent fighter. I've seen him a couple of times against. You've heard of a boy named Sue. Well, here's Judy Flores from the Philippines, 14-3. That one I don't know much about. Flores can't speak to that. Then you're gonna have Shavkat Rakhimov against Justin Paldo, who is a very capable fighter despite his 17-2 record. Don't discount him. 18-0 Lester Martinez against 9-0-2 Joshawn James. And then that's going to be the headlining bout's going to be 25-1 Ramon Cardenas, who we've seen a few times on these Pro Box cards, picking up some good victories against undefeated 20-0 Brian Acosta. I think this is the best card of the week, and it's going to be on Saturday from Pro Box.
Yeah, I like Acosta. So they're all competitive. Pro Box they just do a good job with this. They all their fights are competitive, and they give the guys step ups when they should. And so yeah, I like Acosta. So it'll be good. It'll be decent. And you're right. I think overall it'll be better because there's going to be more competitive fights on this card. So yeah, I definitely would watch the Pro Box.
What I like about Pro Box is nobody has a sacred record to them. They
put you in there. They don't coddle you that much, and they don't really. They throw you in there. They're gonna push you, and because honestly, they don't have I wouldn't say the resources, but they don't. They're trying to build their product. They don't have time to build a guy for 4 or 5 years. They try to. They're just like, we're going to get you in there and see what you got, and I like that.
Well, and sometimes that 4 to 5 plus years when they've already got fights under their belt, it's ridiculous. Like you look at some of these guys getting title shots around their 10th fight. Yeah, they have amateur background and stuff, but some of these guys just need a shit or get off the pot. I know they hate to see these guys eliminated from title contention, but this doesn't mean they can't entertain us. And I think Pro Box still respects those guys too, and they give them a chance to upset the apple cart when the apple cart might have been upset against them just a few fights back as well. So it's a good program that's there. This is not going to be in Florida. They're starting to move around the product. They won a purse bid for a title fight recently, and I can't remember who it is, but there's going to be some more interesting cards.
They had the Lamont Roach fight, didn't they?
They had Lamont Roach.
They had his title shot, I think, on the Pro Box. I think they had his
defense.
Yeah, they had his defense. Yeah. Yes, so I knew they had something.
Yeah, so yeah, they're messing around. They're doing a good job there.
And they still believe in the green card girls. They heavily believe in that. Just heavily believe.
Yep.
So I enjoy that part of it. They have when everybody's going
San Antonio too, so they might have some Mexican American chicks.
Pro Box went with everybody's going this way. We're going to go the exact opposite and go more extreme with our green card girls. So I definitely enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, I just worry about Paulie and future lawsuits. We'll see how things go for him, though. We'll see. But anyways, yeah, that's what we have for the week. I don't know. Does anyone else have any other thoughts before we go? We're only at about 2:10 here, so if anyone has any boxing related thoughts, feel free to share them.
I kind of wanted to speak on the Ben Eubank thing because it's going to happen, isn't it? Is there a date announced for that? I'm a little bit.
Thought it was April something.
Yeah, and I want to correct myself before I make sure I'm being factual before I start going off on one. But is that coming from His Excellency? Is he putting that on, or what's the crack with that?
Maybe. Let me see here. I'm trying to. It's going to be on DAZN, so I would think he's got some involvement there. What day do they say here? Trying to.
So I just think I said like it's tired. It's tired. This whole saga is tired. Everything about it is bad. But these fights where the two guys are fighting above the weight classes, and this is how I feel about the Bud fight too. With Canelo, the weight classes are there for a reason. Like, you can't be just fucking jumping up and yo-yoing up and down weights. And if they're dragging Eubank down, it's the longer. Like, this fight was dangerous 2 years ago when it was supposed to happen. It's even more dangerous this time when it's been prolonged.
He's been fighting all at middleweight since that's happened. I think the first fight against Beefy, he might have had trouble, but he's made the weight fine after that. In my opinion, that's where he's been fighting at.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
and April 26th, by the way, Rob, April 26th.
Yeah, so I know basically the people who sold us this fight are the promoters and the fighters themselves. It's getting legs because of the last names of the two of these guys. Neither of them have hit the heights, and they're not like established world champions even. They're just, Eubanks had the better of the two careers, but his career is flattered to deceive as well. He probably didn't hit the heights that he should have done. He lost in key moments earlier in his career, and it's just been a kind of a carousel ever since of trainers and change of styles. And I give him his credit. I thought he beat Liam Smith the first time. He did the job the second time, and I think he'll hurt. I think he'll hurt Ben, but I just don't like this. I thought this fight stunk from the start, and I thought there was people, especially after the whole disgrace that came with it, the level of public scrutiny that the sport came under when Ben popped hot for the clomiphene, the aftermath, the Pierce Morgan, the circus that came after it. And then after all that, when both guys have a chance at redemption, we still end up getting the fight that nobody wanted, and it's being forced on us. And I just don't like it. It just doesn't sit right with me that they're bringing up a guy from fucking probably could be 140 pounder without the wind assistance, like up to 60. And it's just, I don't know, it just leaves a rotten taste in my mouth. I really don't like this fight. I don't like these fighters jumping up like two weight classes. It just wouldn't happen if they didn't have the names that are attached with them. And like,
if anybody deserved a weight bully beatdown, it's probably Conor.
Yeah, I mean, there's that as well. There's that too. Like, and he is the most unlikable guy in the sport. Like, there's just nothing redeeming about this fight whatsoever. It's not even as if you can have a vested interest in either of them. Conor Benn is so annoying. He makes Chris Eubank look really likable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the funny part is Eubank's the hero in this one. He's like whoever thought that he would be the guy that you're rooting for. I never thought that was going to happen.
It's basically thought versus cunt. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. It's just I don't like it. I don't like it. But I hope, for the sake of the sport, that it doesn't. They had the chance to pull the plug on this fight. You know what I mean? When it didn't happen that time, that should have been a sign that it wasn't supposed to happen. And now, even 2 years down the line, it's an even bigger risk, I feel. So yeah, I just look. I could be being a bit of a fucking negatron here, but I just don't like it. Don't like this. Don't like it. I don't like the sour taste it left after the drug testing. I don't like the weight disparity. I don't like the fact that they're just getting a massive payday off of their dad's legacy fights. It's just like, I just hate it.
There's just so much drama about it. It sells it in this kind of culture where, the misfits boxing and shit like that. Like, people want a compelling storyline in a way, even if it's fucking like despicable shit,
It's a glorified misfits card, like, in a lot of ways, isn't it?
I don't think that's incorrect at all.
Yeah, so not mad on that, but apart from that, and I don't like the Bud versus Canelo fight at all either. I don't even think
I disagree.
Bud's 150. I don't even think Bud's a 154 pounder. So I think, like, even if he fights, he'll be at 60 pounds. Is a 60-pound version good enough, or Crawford good enough to beat Canelo? I don't know. Maybe this version of him,
I don't
but
think Canelo's a 68 fighter. Honestly, I think he's middleweight.
at this stage, he is though. At this stage, and I heard he operated at middleweight for what, all of 3 fights.
No, it
3
kind of
fights.
depends if you're talking actual middleweight or a string of fights at 155 pounds.
157 of that, yeah.
Canelo weight.
You know how much beef he's eating to make himself a 168?
A lot.
He's the one.
Mucho.
He's a 168. He is definitely a 168 now. He is. This is. I agree with Rob.
He was going up to 75 and coming back down to 68 for the last fucking 7 years of that. Like.
You get excited because you think to yourself, man, it's going to be awesome if Crawford wins. That's the only. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, I'm not Rob. I can't get excited for it yet. Maybe when it gets closer, if you see kind of how Crawford's filling out, and maybe see what it looks like. But hell, you can't blame Crawford. I mean, he's his ego and he's gonna go for it. Why not? Fuck it, go for it.
Gonna make like $12-15 million.
Yeah.
To have a huge, to be called one of the greatest fighters of all time.
I totally get why Crawford wants this fight. He's the ultimate competitor. He's never been defeated. He's 100% confidence. He's a supreme talent. And if he pulls it off, obviously his legacy will be cemented. But from Crawford's point of view, it's the only robbable bank, isn't it? Like, it's the only fight. He has to probably think, another 14 pounds and I can make the mega fight. The Spence fight was his biggest money fight to date. Where else is there to make money for him? Like, around welter, around 60 is fucking cleared out. Like, there's no big name stars there, so he kind of has to go to 68 to get the money. I get it, like, and finish his career on a massive payday. I totally get the reasons why he's doing it. They're all financial, but that doesn't mean I have to like it, that way.
Yeah, and I mean, he has no interest. I think he's done after this. He was looking for one more big payday that had something to do with legacy, and he's done. And I think he doesn't believe he'll lose because he's that kind of guy. But I think he's also the kind of guy that, he'll be able to walk away. That's my opinion.
He has nothing to lose. If he loses, then he lost to a guy who was 3 times bigger than him in a weight wise. So Canelo's the one that has the legacy to lose and has the black eye if he loses. Crawford, he has nothing to lose. Nothing.
Well, yeah, losing to Floyd Mayweather and Dimitri Bivol, I mean, like, there's like no shame in that, especially when like the background. But losing to a guy who's coming up like that, I don't know. It's kind of like, I guess the closest thing I could think of is like De La Hoya against Pacquiao, but De La Hoya was coming back down also and not making the weight properly, which made it tough. And I mean, there's a whole backstory about that.
You can look at De La Hoya versus Hopkins either. Like, he's up at 60. I know he's dared to be great, and he was up at 54, but there was a big difference on the night, I thought, in the size between Hopkins and De La Hoya that night. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, he just got outmanned. I mean, Hopkins just realized he could walk right through this guy.
John Ruiz lost to a guy like 5 weight classes before when Roy Jones come up, so that had to make him feel like shit.
Yeah, it happens. And
what a knife.
Canelo's Canelo's is a very good fighter still, but I don't think he's the fighter that he used to be either. I think there's a question about like what level he's really at anymore.
We need to bring back Storm and Norman to be in the camp for Canelo for that fight when it happens. Fucking fight him, Johnny. Fight him.
Yeah. Hey, John Ruiz didn't fight anybody, so that was never going to happen. He definitely was the most passive guy I've ever seen in my life in a ring.
How did he, I don't know how he never got DQ'd for holding. Like, how did John Ruiz never get DQ'd for holding? See, no one has a good answer.
Still beat Holyfield, right? Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I got that version. It's so tough judging like where Holyfield was at because, he got stopped by James Toney, but then like 5 years after that, he, in my opinion, beat Nikolai Valuev. Like I don't know how to I really don't know how to rate him in that period of time.
Well, you could rate him that he was fucking red hot on radioactive on steroids. I think that's fucking good. That's a good way to.
He glowed in every fight he went. Yeah, he definitely beat Valuev, and then, like I said, I know people watched that fight because George Foreman just got on everybody, but I remember he said that Ruiz Holyfield, that was like one of the best fights he's ever commentated. It's like one of the he just, and remember what was it? What was this guy? What was his name? Larry Merchant was like, "You have to be. This is the worst fight I've ever seen in my life." And George is like, "You don't know boxing. You don't know heavyweight boxing." Larry Merchant's like, "George, you don't know boxing." He's like, "This is terrible."
Wasn't that one of the best things about? Like Merchant was rightfully sometimes criticized for his acerbic fucking takes or whatever, but at least when they were broadcasting, they could have conflict with each other and they weren't all singing off a pre-read script. Do you know that way?
You have the best commentary team are the ones where you have different opinions and they can have they can go back and forth. It sucks when the commentary is all saying the same thing. You have to have different opinion because you want to hear something else. You want to hear the same exact shit. And Merchant, you might not have liked it, but he said his piece. And that was great. That's what you missed. We don't have that anymore. We don't get that much anymore.
Yeah, I mean the zone is like fucking Jonestown, man. They fucking you're just getting brainwashed when you're watching the fucking guy. You're like, am I watching this fucking fight or what? Like, was this really? You know,
because they're told this is the guy you got to push. I don't care what the other guy does. I don't care what he does. Your guy's doing it better. Push it.
And that's why I like Pro Box. Pro Box is like the fucking Boxing Asylum of boxing broadcasting. Like they're just doing their own thing, and it might be small or whatever, but at least they're fucking calling it honestly. Like.
Well, and they're guys with a good background on there. When you have every week you're having Paulie and Chris Algieri calling fights, say what you want about, how you might feel about them, like personally or this, that, or the other. These are guys with really good fight brains who have been in with an incredible level of fighter.
There's no doubt Malinazzi is the best commentator of the modern era. Like he's just his outlandish opinions get him in trouble or get him kind of fucking in a position where he's not in the mainstream anymore, or put him in a position where he's not in the mainstream anymore. But that's, I think, boxing's loss because his insights during the fight when they're happening, the live breakdowns when he's talking about adjustments that should be made by certain fighters is second to none, really, when it comes to Paulie Malignaggi. It's a pity for the sport that he's not on some of the bigger fights, like, because I used to really, really enjoy his commentary on the Sky cards and on the US cards. Like, I thought he was brilliant.
Well,
and he came to Waterford for a couple of months back. Like, talk about dedication to the craft. Like, he's over fucking him and Chris Algieri are over commentating on fucking Dylan Moran versus Tyrone McKenna. Like, absolutely amazing.
They're dedicated.
I think, don't they own Pro Box? Isn't Paulie and them? Don't they own like a big part of it?
I think so.
Gary Jonas is the owner.
I'm pretty sure they all started it together. So Paulie, he's going to be out pushing it everywhere because, hey, he got a job because he owns part of the company. So he's pushing it. But yeah, I think I know him, Algieri. There's like 3 or 4 other fighters that own a piece of that somewhere. I don't know how much, but I know they all own a piece.
Well, and it's the right setup for a guy like Paulie because
yeah,
like, they have it and they have it on YouTube. But if YouTube ever got pissed off at them, they got their own Pro Box channel. Like they're set up to be totally insulated and do their own thing. So Paulie says some people disagree with, as long as Gary Jonas doesn't really give a fuck, they'll continue on about their day. And I guarantee you, like, the type of people that tune into Pro Box events aren't the kind of people who are going to be like, oh, I can't believe he used that slur. I can never watch boxing again. Like, sorry,
no, you're not gonna be sensitive.
Years ago, buddy.
Hey, you've already got issues if you're up at 11 o'clock at night on YouTube watching boxing anyway. So I don't think you're too sensitive about a lot of things.
Amen, dude.
Just alienating the listeners there.
Oh, yeah. Hey, they know.
Well, fuck them.
Like anybody listen to boxing? Yeah.
Right on. Hey, Ryan, that was a nice little end to the show there. Des had to bounce; he had to take a call, but we appreciate him for coming on, and we also appreciate James for joining us today as well. And I think pretty much this month, I think we'll be with you every week. I don't see any reason to take a break. We got some good stuff coming on. Keyshawn Davis against Berenchek is going to be not this week, but the next. And then after that, we're going to have the big card from Saudi Arabia that everybody is just salivating over. It's going to be absolutely incredible with so many top-notch fights on there. It's almost too much on one card. Sometimes you're almost like, That's too much, guys. I can't watch this for 6 straight hours. He's great, but seriously, I've got other things to do. But anyways, we'll have a great time with that. So a lot of good stuff to look forward to. Hop in the Patreon if you want to become part of the Nutters chat and get all that good stuff there. And there's other goodies as you up your tier through the Patreon. So keep an eye on that. But again, I'd like to thank James for jumping on, Des, and also still with us, Rob and Justin. We've had a great time with you guys today. And yeah, we will see you back here next week for another edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse.